And we're live, Zohar.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Prickly Pear Show. No, this is not Mira. This is Zohar, my good friend who is taking over for Mira just for the first little while. Zohar, what brings you here today?
Well, the first curiosity I had actually was, why do you call it the Prickly Pear Show?
Are you trying to mock me right now? Is that it from our first conversation?
The beauty is I don't have to try. I can just have a normal conversation with you, and then you open yourself up to mockery.
Okay, fantastic.
That's how I slip it in without any friction.
So now you understand why I brought Zohar, because he can definitely put me in my place. The Prickly Pear Show is a show that's prickly on the outside, sweet on the inside. The goal is to vent about things. Talk about things that annoy you, bother you. Clearly, I have a lot of things. Last week, I sounded like I was the bad person in this show. People actually told me to start smiling more. They don't understand that I'm trying to be myself. So if I don't smile, it's because I don't feel like smiling. And if I want to smile, then I will smile. I just want to be me. Okay. But while I'm saying this, look how I'm dressed today. Yeah. Mira will be proud. So she's trying to dress me.
Right.
She's going to be pleasantly surprised because she's going to see that I at least put some sort of effort.
Okay.
The style that she's going for is she's trying to have me wear like some fun shirts underneath and like a nice top. And the truth is I don't have anything that's actually my dad's, and that's why it doesn't fit right.
So it's a little short on the
Yeah.
So, it's okay. It makes you look, there's a showmanship to it. It's a nice new, blazer. It's got a very soft fabric. It's probably pretty warm.
It is actually. I'm very warm.
I like the color.
But underneath, I have something that's not so Jewish appropriate. I have this whole like bacon strips and bacon strips and bacon strips. But I thought it was a funny shirt to wear. It's
fun. It reminds you of something, something sinfully delicious. And also, if it was
sinfully
kosher,
delicious. That sounds like that would be like a morning song. Sinfully delicious. Bacon
is, it's a morning.
They should have bacon bits as a cereal. No, like something along those lines. No, you wouldn't have that. Maybe not with milk. That will really ruin it.
As a dry cereal, as a competitor to oatmeal, absolutely.
I don't know. Would you have that? Would you have?
Of course, I would. But to me, the true pleasure of bacon isn't in the bits. It's in the long strips.
How did it become so hot all the time? It's like under these lights. We're having some people that are tuning in. It's a little bit hard to read, seeing that people are joining us. Zohar, today's topic is actually very interesting. Okay. We're going to be talking about social media, which is clearly what we're doing right now, talking to people via social media.
Well, you're in luck. I bring an atypical perspective to that for two reasons. One, I don't imbibe social media. I've never had a social media account on any, on any platform that you would have heard of.
Yet you're here today to talk on social media about not having.
So as a consumer, I'm on the outside, but I have actually been to Google's old office downtown in Dundas, Dundas Square, 2 floors of 60 tech companies, desk to desk, had a lot of conversations, a lot of non-disclosure agreements. So there's some perspective on the tech industry. Not completely on the inside, but some.
Zohar, none of us use social media because of the tech industry. What we're doing is just we like ourselves. Like we like to express our opinions. We're out there. We like for people to know what we like to eat, what we care about, what we don't. It's a platform for people to express their opinions. That's really what it's about. But there's a little bit of narcissism behind it. So I'm surprised you don't have Facebook.
Absolutely.
You never had Facebook.
Not once.
Never.
No, never opened an account. And same with Twitter, same with Snapchat, same with everything.
So you actually have a life. You have a real life, like
with
real people.
Yeah.
And you're married.
Yes, that's neither here nor there. That's open to its own ridicule as an institution. Tech is not the only institution that creates problems.
So this week I'm going to wait for Mira to come, but I just want to open it up.
Sure.
People have been watching the show, and I've been on with Mira on several different shows, and people have kind of jumped in. And for some reason, they're not really paying attention to the content. They're paying whatever it is that we're talking about. So it could be like very interesting or not interesting. Right. They can make a comment about that. But they make a comment about how we look physically. So the other day I posted something.
People are judging me physically just because they can see me.
Absolutely. They're judging your curls right now, judging your profile.
Well, the curls are natural.
I believe they are.
I used to have long Kenny G hair.
And now?
Even in Asia, I actually, while I was traveling there, I did sign an autograph in Hong Kong as Kenny G, just because, a rich man's daughter wanted the autograph. And I had a great time. looking like Kenny G. I learned that he's
You
very
actually
popular.
pretended to be Kenny G.
I mean, the impersonation was momentary. I didn't tell anyone I was Kenny G. The guy looked at me, and the daughter said, Kenny G. And he came up to me, asked for an autograph, and I just signed, no problem. And it was a squiggle. It wasn't Kenny G.
Did you end up being with a girl? I mean, there was
No.
Okay.
There was only one room in which I'd met these people,
Mhm.
and it was next to a foyer for. It was a party where everybody got a lot of free food and looked at art,
Okay.
and I got in. But it wasn't networking for me. It was just fun. When they said Kenny G, I was sort of in shock, and I was like, I don't want to disappoint people and say I'm not Kenny G. If they're really convinced, I'll just quickly sign it and move on.
Okay,
So,
we're totally drifting off to something else. So let's get back
also
into
about my physical appearance.
True.
I could fill a couple of hours on this subject.
I should leave the show and just give you the.
No, it's
the option.
it's better to have an audience, I find, actually, because it's not just my intent; it's the effect on you.
Social media.
Yeah.
Why you don't participate in it?
Okay.
How come you don't have Facebook, Twitter? Like what
So
makes you different than anybody else?
it's not ideological per se. I really never cared for it. It didn't affect me. I was never attracted to the concept of opening an account.
Mhm.
Really, I spotted it as a kind of heavy workload and commitment to falsehoods. I've also never done online dating, never created a profile for myself online, never tried to network, never had LinkedIn, anything like that.
Mhm.
Everything technological looks like a scam. And this is not to brag, because of course I didn't see everything coming, but I do feel somewhat vindicated. I'm right. The last decade has been largely a free-for-all for identity politics, and kind of just an elimination, really, of a lot of our 20th century notions of civil rights, again, identity, political participation.
I'm trying to listen, by the way.
Sure.
You're going on like how.
There's a lot to it. These are broad topics. Facebook, just as a for instance, is the largest media company in the world. It doesn't write any content.
It doesn't write content.
Correct.
We write the content. We create the content.
Yeah. Now that sounds magical and lovely. It's not. What you're doing is you're putting in a lot more energy into the system
Mhm.
that then allows that system to just monetize off of you. You are the data you create, and then there's another feedback loop that follows subsequently.
Okay.
The algorithms in Facebook are precisely how people vote against their own interests, for instance. There are tons of scams through it.
Wait, is that the reason you don't have Facebook or any type of social media? Because you're so worried about this whole concept
it's before ideology.
Okay.
Personally, there were things I've never had an addicting personality, so I've never been turned on by playing blackjack at the casino. I played a game that wasn't interesting. I've been in and out of casinos, and I didn't lose any money. Same thing. Prostitutes were never particularly appealing. Being used by any system wasn't all that appealing. Sales don't turn me on.
But
I don't like to shop.
why are you looking at social media as a way? Clearly you're mentioning amazing points. But why are you looking at it as they're using you, they're using the information, as opposed to, hey, I'd like to get people on board for something that I'm doing, or like I use social media to advertise certain opinions, or even like this show. I'm using the tools to fit me. Why can't you do the same?
I see the value superficially, because these are values that are presented to you. So, but my natural suspicion is turned on. And it's not just technology. Even before you had tech companies, you had businesses promulgating a certain point of view, and just everything looked false to me. It's just a reality television, for instance.
Okay.
I missed out on that, and I'm all the better for it. I don't get turned on by illiterate programming, which is really technically where reality television came from. It was adapted from that. Technology, too. Tech companies will tell you, well, we'll make it easier than ever for you to communicate. This is a very superficial form of communication. It's not that LinkedIn has never helped someone network, or Snapchat has never helped someone communicate, or Facebook has never helped someone advertise.
Right.
It's that it's just naive to believe that these singular goals are adapted well. In reality, you're being coaxed out of a protective shell, exposing yourself, and usually to your own detriment, even if you get something out of it. You know, when you post something, it's like going to a slot machine. You're waiting for the like, and it's worse than old slot machines. It's more like the new slot machines. The new slot machines make you anticipate the like that you're going to get or the win, and they'll dole out little wins. You don't get anything real from that. You just waste a lot of time and energy.
That's the thing. So I thought that the reason that you don't use social media is because of the wasting time and energy. Because I realized when I wasn't on Facebook for like about 3 to 4 months, I was getting other things done. But at the same time, this thing kind of brings you in and allows you the opportunity to talk to people that you don't usually talk to. And, you know, like, let's just say, again, I care very much about politics. So if somebody puts out an ad, I read it, then I have an opinion on it, and we have a discussion. Does it lead anywhere? Probably not. But then some people know your opinions, they know what you're up to. Why wouldn't you be able to use that, again, to fit you? Meaning use social media to help move your position on certain things that you care about.
Arguably, if I had an entrenched position and I was organizing politically, it would be necessary, even if not sufficient, for me to have a Facebook page. That Facebook page would represent, if not my name in politics, then at least something like the organization I'm advocating for. That is a legitimate use because it's an institutionalized use. That's very different than an individual providing a snapshot of what they're thinking and feeling in a moment, and then that snapshot is forever used against them as a lens into their own character.
But where else are you going to get like cute kittens and dogs and, you know, moving around? Clearly that's social media.
Absolutely right. And the internet has provided more views for animals than probably any advocacy group on earth.
But you, I'm sure you watch little videos, right? I mean, you watch stuff online. It might not be on Facebook. It might not be on Twitter or whatever it is. But
That's right.
You watch that stuff.
Yes, and I.
So why not
subscribe to many YouTube channels?
Okay.
For instance.
So that is social media, isn't it? In some ways.
I don't communicate or leave the comments, and so sure, what we connote, the connotation for social media, I don't participate in. However, it should be noted that the phenomena that follow subsequently from the internet, I do participate in. Now, let's say I was like Henry David Thoreau and I tried to live in a cabin in the woods. I wouldn't actually escape anything. The internet is publicly funded infrastructure, and assets are largely digital. Human beings have to communicate through them. There's simply no way I can escape that. I use the internet even if I never log on again. I have used it. My bank will use the internet on my behalf, even if I never try and do my banking online.
But I think
You
I
understand?
get your point, but I think you're going too much into it. So my question is, you just found yourself to find information on, again, other sources, like you watch stuff on YouTube.
Sure.
I'm sure you Google. I'm sure you've seen some cat and dog videos out there, right?
I don't have patience for the cat and dog videos, but
you don't have patience for the cat and dog videos.
I know. But 6 seconds for one of the cutest videos online is probably kittens waking up.
Oh yeah, that sounds cute.
It is very cute, but after about 6 to 16 seconds, I just can't stand it. I can't keep watching animals wake up, even though my brain is highly.
So then go into animals falling asleep.
I'm sure that's cute too.
That's
Actually,
cute.
there's a famous internet video probably from a few years ago about a dog that has seizures, and so it falls down and then it goes to sleep. So it has seizures and narcolepsy. And you feel bad talking about it, but when you watch it, your brain can't help but find it cute. Okay, because unconsciously, well before you have conscious thoughts, you're responding to something called neoteny. It's these childlike features. So dogs and cats and a lot of mammals are very cute to us because they have little baby faces.
Right.
So we don't intuit that the dog is really suffering. I mean,
no, if I knew
that a human being,
right? But if I knew he's suffering, I don't know if I'd feel the same way about it.
But that feeling of concern would be somewhat dimmed by the active feeling of adoration, of finding it cute. And this is what's in conflict. You know, it's not the internet's fault directly that any smartphone you have uses blue wavelength light. It disturbs your sleep. It harms actually your gut bacteria for all kinds of reasons.
You know, we want people to tune in, and what it seems like we're doing right now is like,
Tell
you
them to go
know,
away.
guys, don't be using Facebook anymore. Don't go on it. It's
Stop.
it's a waste of
Watch.
time.
Your real life is not digital or online.
But it's true.
Outside.
No, but it's true. Like I totally agree with you that it's true that that this is not real life. A lot of the people that we have on Facebook are not real friends. You know, like, you know, they're not people you can really count on. They're people that you remember from high school, and they seem to be good. But at the same time, I'm going to share an interesting story without really getting into it and talking about the specific individual. But since I started making the film about mental health,
yes.
I've put it out there that I took an interest in mental health and trying to help myself through the process. And while making this movie, a lot of people have looked onto me for help. And people have been contacting me because of Facebook. And there's certain people from high school that I probably would have just said hello to if I would have saw them downtown. But we've never really had a real conversation until I put it out there that I'm making this movie. Just last week, I got a message from a friend, and I'm clearly not going to mention his name, who was going through something horrific in his life. And because of the fact that he was able to see that I was working on this film, he decided to ask me a few questions. And at that moment in time, the person felt like he had nobody else to go to, like nobody understood what he was going through. And I mean, I could show some people the messages that he sent me, but in those 2 days that I was helping him out, he started feeling a lot better about himself, and he's decided to be proactive when it comes to his mental health issues.
Sure.
So if you use the Facebook or Twitter to help people, to try and encourage people to, you know, be more proactive in their lives and you know, help them out with specific, shouldn't it be a great tool? Should we not just ignore it because technology is taking over our life, but we can use it?
You actually can't ignore it, that's for sure.
No, but I'm saying, like, you can use this as a tool to help you with your
of course you can. Yes.
with your ideas, you know, sharing information.
It's just there is a dangerous slope, because the incentive is not to get you to use it for useful purposes. You have a dynamic and plastic mind. You can use it for whatever you like, for, you know, for good or for evil. And often you don't know the difference until you see the effects 10 years later. The point is that Rhodes Scholars got together to design all these user interface devices so as to get you addicted. It's the same when you go back in time and you look at powerful scientific research for cigarettes. It doesn't matter if you find a good study about how, okay, well, now I can delay Parkinson's by smoking if I have no family history of cancer. What you're really worried about is the 4,800 chemicals that wouldn't exist in nature if it wasn't for that particular company. Or I can make the strongest argument for social media. The Green Revolution in Iran was heavily lubricated by the use of Twitter. It allowed them to circumnavigate telecom interference, which in Iran is a serious problem. Not just that's one of the few things Iran and Iraq share with each other. It's that the only way people had to communicate, even through the internet, was through special satellite devices so that they could try and organize politically. But Twitter let them do it from smartphone to smartphone. Okay, that was hugely disruptive.
You know what? You brought up something amazing during the uprising in Egypt, right? They were able to bring down the president, right, because of Facebook. So clearly, you can use it as a tool to try and help raise awareness and to get people together. But at the same time, anything that's coffee. Here's an example. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Very industrious drug.
We drink. We need to get started in the morning. Everybody can say, "Oh, I need my coffee in the morning." It's like it tastes disgusting. By the way, I have water in here. I don't have coffee.
It's right. It's a drug, and it doesn't taste good. In part because of coffee, we started to subsidize sugar as well. See what I mean?
No.
Sugar is what made early coffee palatable to people. And society from the coffee houses became a lot more industrious. You know, Philadelphia, starting the American Revolution, was like probably just for the short 80 years that Athens was relevant to history, Philadelphia was truly relevant. Coffee was a huge part of that. If Benjamin Franklin were drunk on wine throughout every part of the day, you wouldn't have a lot of, frankly, the progress that we wanted. That being said, for coffee, which has tons of health benefits, it changed our bodies to a degree, it changed a lot of society, some superficially, some materially, but it also allowed for the subsidy of sugar, for the destruction of Haiti, and Haitian people, which they still suffer today. Nothing exists in a vacuum. If you want to use Twitter for good, you must acknowledge that it's also used for evil. If I put chlorine in the water...
But we acknowge it. I think as a people...
That's fine. So,
I think we acknowledge it. I think we know that...
Yeah, people know tech companies don't have your best interests at heart.
But is it... Why are you so consumed with the tech companies? Why can't you just see...
Brought up social media. That's fine.
No. But I'm saying, like, of course I brought up social media, but why are you so consumed with the idea that technology is controlling us as opposed to us being able to control what we do with technology?
It's very easy for people to talk about the benefits because the benefits are advertised. It's the neglected conversation of not just should we be concerned about this or that, but the true pathologies that go all the way back to the origins of every physical piece of technology. When the Pentagon takes public money for decades, develops stuff, makes it profitable, and then just hands it off to large companies so that pools of private profit can continue to affect culture in ways that individuals can't. People should be somewhat terrified by that.
Again, I totally get your point. Like, I understand where you're coming from, but my question to you is, why, knowing all this information, why can't you say, okay, I have the information, why don't I use this for good? Why don't I use this in order to be able to talk about things that I care about?
Yeah, you can.
You know, like I have 2,500 friends on my Facebook. I know every person that's on my Facebook, but I don't talk to 2,500 people. But I made the choice that I want to be friends with these 2,500 people. You can have 15 friends on Facebook, and that's all. And these are the people that you can cater to. So,
absolutely.
Meaning, why not have a Facebook account that just has your real friends on it? And rather than just like I'm sure when you have a birthday, you want to send a message to your friends, letting them know that when the party's going to happen.
Sure.
Right. So you use WhatsApp.
I use WhatsApp,
right?
Which is a Facebook company. It was purchased.
Purchased, right?
Yeah.
It's actually an Israeli company that was Facebook purchased it. But nonetheless, we're getting off. The idea behind it is like, why be so much against it and not use it for your benefit? Or
I'm not against technology. I just
well, you can be against technology, but I'm talking about this as a.
I'm not in love with it. I don't romanticize it, and part of that doesn't come from. I mean, yes, there's some instinctual. There's something called iconoclasm, iconoclasm, or whatever. It's the idea that all these icons, everything we love, any object that we adore, probably has some shady end to it, and there are virtually no exceptions in history. So it's just that I understand from getting so much information from a broad spectrum of perspectives that any conversation that is about galvanizing your message should also lead us to an understanding where those limits are. You want to do the maximum good through Facebook.
Right.
So let's say you want to send a message to those 2,500 people, and you become a lightning rod for their message. You get some political movement, grassroots, etc., and so on. But your message is also heavily stratified, which means there's not much nuance. Even if you're trying to inject nuance into a conversation, what you find is that you stiffen a lot of messages, and then people can't always hang on to, let's say, your movement. It's very difficult to visualize because you're just talking about the one message you sent out, but it's not in a vacuum. So great, use the tool. I can use chlorine and fluoride to save millions of lives over the course of decades in every region on Earth. Or I can use it to gas people in the fields and kill more teenagers than history has ever murdered. What do you want from me? You want me to tell you that chlorine gas doesn't exist because a version of it was put in our water system?
No, but I think you're misconstruing what we're trying to talk about here. I'm saying, like, why can't you use Facebook or any type of social media outlet to be able to really just do what you want to do with it, as opposed to saying, no, I reject it completely, this is not for me?
So that's anecdotal.
Because you still use the chloride, right? You still use it.
Well, I mean,
you brought that up. You still use it, right?
I still drink
water. And you're smart enough to know. You're smart enough to know that you're not going to use it in order to kill people. You're going to use it maybe to clean your teeth.
That's right.
Right? So you're smart enough to know that you can use this system to try and broadcast your information, just like we're doing right now.
But it opens me up to the liabilities that other people will attach. If I actually call a constituent from my phone line, I have a larger marginal effect on that constituent hearing my voice or taking 5 minutes to talk to me.
Sure.
Than I do from posting on Facebook. Pretty much by definition.
But that makes sense. But here's the difference. When you're putting something out there right now, how many people are tuning in to hear what you have to say? Whereas to make that phone call, you literally have to phone call each individual.
Well, each individual constituent.
Okay.
Because if you post on Facebook, that constituent actually doesn't have to respond directly to you.
Right.
They can let it go into a wave pool of ridicule and.
But why not combine the two? That's what I want to know. Why not combine the two?
Well, just for my case, anecdotally.
Okay.
So yeah, it starts from me not being particularly turned on by the notion of using.
By the way, I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's
See,
okay.
you're a very smart person. Clearly,
Okay.
the audience can see.
Thank
I love everything you have to say. You're one of the most educated people that I know, and I'm sure people will learn from you. I'm sure that if you were out there using social media, people will be able to pick up on a lot of things that you have to say. So
That may be true. I am.
and now you're not interested in sharing that information?
It's true that actually I do like to share. I especially like to inform, and social media, when it's presented as a buffet of communication options, should intrigue me. But my instinct is that if I start down that road, I will actually get very little of that benefit, whereas my brain will then be tethered to a lot of routines that I don't enjoy, waiting for people to respond to what I've said so that I may respond. But the unconscious issues it causes, the unhealthy dynamic with technology, is baked into the cake of that experience. So it's not like I can just create a Facebook account, post, and then have positive effects. I'm really just running down the clock of incredible stress. My cortisol levels alone will just go through the roof because I will be on call to the lightning rod of technology. And it doesn't help to just turn comments off and stop there. Or maybe it does help.
Okay, so it brings me on to the next topic, which is...
I've never networked through LinkedIn. Wouldn't that help me? And things
yeah,
like
wouldn't that help you? I mean, clearly...
Arguably it would. But if I had done it back when LinkedIn came in,
right.
I might be talking about some communications project, some arts or humanities project, and then someone nowadays who I'd want to meet for, let's say, automotive mergers and acquisitions would look in the past and be like, he's some theater brat or something like that. How can you foresee that?
Well, you're able to change the information.
You can edit a profile,
right?
But there are servers that always have your old profile. Businesses, especially the people in mergers and acquisitions, for instance, anyone who's in financial services or fintech, is going to find a way to find not just what you posted now. They're going to trace from its URL archiving. They'll get all your old information, every mistake you've ever written.
So you think that people are actually looking into things? You think that, like, when you're trying to get a job?
Professional level people can look into them. Maybe not a consumer level job. If I'm just applying for a job, they're only going to see what I post now.
It's a weird question, but what are you scared of when it comes to technology?
Unforeseen consequences. And in part, tracking and things like that.
Well, you're here today on the show, and you're probably talking about certain things that were, you will be talking about things that maybe will be used against you.
Absolutely. And there's interesting... Not at this moment, but it should.
Okay.
It should. Because it's not just if I type a message, but there's incredible technology that will record my voice. Let's say 50 people like you and I are talking in a room. They already have the tech. One algorithm can record all the voices, collect them, and then a bunch of algorithms sort them out. And the same way that a dog tastes one taste out of 50, it will pick out perfect pronunciation and tone from me and get rid of all the other white noise. And it will do it for every person in the room. There's no more hiding.
Moving on to the next topic, which kind of has to do with it. I'm doing this show because in some ways I was an actor, in my early teens, and I stopped caring about the business. Like, I stopped caring about acting, to be quite honest. And I felt nervous when I started being in front of a camera. I started looking at myself, and I became semi-narcissistic. And I hated that person that I am. And I kind of gave up on the whole industry, and I became a filmmaker because I wanted to work with actors as opposed to be one of them.
Okay.
The reason I'm doing the show is because I want to overcome that fear that I had and just be natural and talk about things and not have the fear that somebody's judging me or cares about me. But there's a little bit of narcissism that comes behind it. Like, why would I want to put myself out there in front of the audience and, dress a certain way and talk a certain way and make people feel a certain way, when in reality, I don't even know what the audience is looking to get out of the show.
Right.
Right. They might be looking just to see, is your co-host going to be dressed a certain way, or
That's right.
Right, or I don't know, I'm just here to support a friend. So do you believe that people that have like the Facebook Live or people that put themselves out there have some sort of narcissism behind them, or is it?
Well, I wouldn't.
Or is it more about the message? I
would try not to. A message can be deeply embedded in narcissism, because both the message and narcissism are really incidental to one another. Primate psychology is as such that you can tease out narcissism if you're self-involved enough to eat the whole piece of cake when there's a person at the other side of the table. There's a very smooth transition from the fact that you're hungry and therefore lacking empathy because your gut microbiome is telling you to eat, versus you're really not hungry and you eat anyways, in part to socialize with the other person. Narcissism, unfortunately, is a highly natural set of phenomena in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Is it narcissistic? In a trivial way, it is. You have to put on airs, you have to act a certain way, even if you go wacky on camera or whatever. You're self-conscious. That conscientiousness that we call narcissism is actually more of adjacent to narcissism. It gets very technical. People should not be ridiculed for low-level narcissism. We should only try and point to it. The people watching this have their own little concerns.
But you see, like, there's posts. Unfortunately, today's setup doesn't allow me to really read information. If you lean in, it's hard for me to read some of the information that people are putting out there.
Well, it's just saying that they joined. I don't see any particular comments. Just there are 2 comments. Should we go and view them?
You could, yeah. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because if somebody is saying that we are narcissistic because we have the show, by them posting a comment, are they being narcissistic by putting themselves out there?
Because they used such a low bar to enter the insult, it invites you to meet the tone they set. Yes, in a trivial way, they're being narcissistic simply by bringing up narcissism. But to try and treat it as a fair comment, narcissism, would have to be some extra pathology. Something like a different situation. You and I are acknowledging each other. Maybe we end up speaking past each other's points. So does that make us narcissistic? Yeah, and the primates are heavily narcissistic. There's no reason to say otherwise. But for the word to have any meaning, it needs to have some special context. If you invited me here, didn't let me talk, that'd be narcissistic. If I continue monologuing and don't let you talk, I might end up being pretty narcissistic by the end of the show. And you mentioning narcissism just makes me more self-conscious that I'm monologuing too much. Doesn't that make me narcissistic? See what I mean? There's not much meaning. So people will use something called the superlative. It's just the most.
No, there's a reason why I brought it up. When I started when I started making the film, this was the first time, by the way, in a long time where I was the main character in my movie. And I actually did not want to participate. I didn't want to be the actor. I didn't want to be it. But I knew that I had to take on that role and had to become that. And then I started asking myself, am I doing it because I'm narcissistic, because I want to see my face, because I want people to hear my opinions? And I was like, no, it had nothing to do with it. I just wanted to be authentic. And the fact that I was questioning myself, I said to myself, why am I even asking these questions? Because maybe there is some form of narcissism behind it. To think that I'm so special to put myself out there. What if I could have come up with a different way and interviewed somebody else for the film as opposed to having myself? So you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know how to look at. I didn't know how to look at this. I felt that some people thought that I was narcissistic, and I couldn't really explain to the audience that really I don't want to be a part of this. I really did not want to put myself in the limelight.
I would not use the label narcissistic in this context.
So what would you use?
Well, I would actually say that you were self-conscious about the choices you were making, the artistic choices you were making, and that you deliberated, because from what you're telling me, it sounds like...
But people don't know that. That's the thing. People don't know what I was really going through.
People
didn't
don't know
that I didn't want to be out there. Like I was doing, morning vlogs, to talk about where I was going, and I hated it. I was like, God damn it, this is something that became a chore. And yet, other people were like, oh, look, there's Ron again, talking about the thing that he's doing. Who the hell gives a damn?
That's right.
And I was like, God damn it, I have to do this in order to get the message out for people to tune in.
And that's a post they're doing. People don't really see the work or the effort. They tend to criticize from the outside. And it's usually not a deliberation they're making. They're not taking a lot of time. It's just an impression they get. People respond to their impressions and their opinions and their feelings like those are factual. They're not.
So why do you think people are tuning in right now? So clearly we're seeing like a lot of people are tuning in.
Convenience is a huge part of it.
Convenience?
Yeah.
A lot of people, so what, they're sitting there at home, they're like, hey, there's something to do. Just let's tune in and see what the conversation's all about.
I mean, Facebook does feed this video to them. So that's the first part of why they're doing it. There is convenience.
Mm-hmm.
The second part, which is highly individuous to each one of them, is are we competing with other things that they would rather watch? You'll probably find there's a whole spectrum of reasons, but out of the dozen or so reasons as to why people are watching us, once you have a proper index of them, you find out they're not remarkable reasons. You find out it has to do with place, time, convenience, this or that. We don't have to be special for them to watch us. But then a single-digit percentage of them probably will have a particular interest, not just in the keywords you use, like mental health, but in the subsequent content of what we're saying.
The other day, I started talking about a little bit. I posted something online. I met up with a friend of mine. I'm not going to mention his name, but it's somebody who's not like a young fella who's immature. Somebody who's pretty mature, about 56 years old. And he said to me, by the way, I checked out your show the other day. And I was like, great, what did you think about it? And he said, your co-host has really nice boobs. And I was like, really? That's what you got out of the show?
Right.
And it kind of bothered me, and it's funny, I put it out there, and my co-host got upset that I even put it out there, which is going to be coming in. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. I'd love to discuss it with her. But that wasn't my intent at all. And I think she misunderstood why I tried to put it out there. And clearly, maybe, I don't know if we're having so many people tuning in to you because you don't have big boobs. But I want to know, why do you think people are tuning in to watch these types of shows? Really to get the information, or to judge us, or to look at us and say, this person looks good, this person doesn't?
It is for all of the above, but when a person watches, very often they won't be consciously aware of what their habits are or why. And this is something that's very pernicious, this myth of conscious thought governing our lives. It's very superficial. Conscious thought is just literal brain farts after the event. A lot of what we call feelings, for instance, are initial processing in the brain that we haven't even started to study properly. I'll give you a perfect example. There's something called moral disgust.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have morality and physical disgust together? We think about it as though it's an etymology thing. We evolved it to the word, it's our thoughts. It's not. It's real estate in the brain being pressed together in 3 dimensions. There's an overlap between the neurons and synapses that fire and wire together for versions of morality and disgust. So your evolution, not because it's the best path for evolution, but it just happened this way, that the same similar real estate in the brain responds to rotten food as it does to something you find morally reprehensible, like stealing candy from a baby. There's a reason you get queasy. And people have no conscious way of introspecting to find the truth. The truth is often so irrelevant to what we're thinking and feeling and doing and saying that we're really reduced to a laughably, what's the best word, but haphazard sort of species. So yeah, we can try and create conscious thoughts if you want, reasoning about why do people react this way or that. But like it or not, your friend, very mature, evolved to value breasts.
Right. No, I understand it, but again, we put on the show, and a lot of people are messaging me like, oh, have you been with her before? Or who is she? It's like, hey, we're trying to put on a show to really engage you, to entertain you. I don't know, maybe it's my fault. I'm thinking people are tuning in because of the content. I'm thinking that people here...
It's not so much a fault. You come into a situation with high-mindedness, you project that, you're unconsciously hoping, really relying on people to meet you halfway. But there's a reason that the most common denominator is the lowest common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why we measure. We're using a metaphor of high and low, which just tells you that our brains, all we do is look at the world and think of geometry, and we think it makes sense, and it doesn't.
Why don't you tell me something that you're doing today? I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
I love the spot.
That you're helping inspire other people. Like something that you're doing that's not so much about you, but about really helping mankind.
I don't know if it's mankind. Again, there are non-disclosure agreements involved because when companies are pre-commercial, they're not in the commercial market yet, they don't want you telling anything. Mm-hmm. It can destroy millions of dollars.
We'll try and kind of swear around it.
I was involved at least in helping people determine which combinatorials, that is certain maths that are used in computer science, might be best in aiding people to more efficiently model things in 3 dimensions. But
speak to them in proper English or simpler English so they can understand
It's easier to cure diseases if you have other people's work in things like protein folding right in front of you, and you just pick up where they left off. To do that, to find out which person should actually be working on which modeling is not so simple, and I can't get into the processes, but it was nice, and there was no compensation. It was nice to try and figure out to do some manual work so that future work could be automated. That's the sort of most broad project.
Why did you decide to get into that?
I had the opportunity.
Well, but is it just an opportunity, or was it more than that? Like, was it to try and help people?
It is to help people, but I mean, someone asked me if I'd be interested. Of course, I was.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's it. I couldn't find it myself. I did not truly know or understand the subject, and when I started going through the data, I didn't think I was the right person to even think about it. I don't have a computer science degree. Mm-hmm. I don't have a philosophy degree either. And more importantly, I don't know the combinatorial mathematics. That's very tough stuff. First thing I told them was, you need a chief technology officer. And he said, well, we got a few of those already. So now we need somebody who just likes to think and isn't so constrained. So can you help us out? I said, yeah. So very, very happy that I got to be involved in that. And that really has nothing to do with me. Anyone could have done it aside from me, or at least anyone could have gotten it.
Is there something that you feel passionate about to want to get involved, to try and help mankind in some way? Meaning, not something that's just presented to you, but something where you feel really passionately about. Helping, I don't know, you've been to Asia, and I'm sure during your travels to Asia, you were there for about a year, if I'm correct, right?
A little over a year.
Over a year. So when you were there, you saw the poverty, you saw what that life was like.
Sure.
Have you ever thought to yourself, hey, I'd like to make a difference, I'd like to do something positive to help certain people? I mean, this is just my...
Yes, yeah, I would like to. But again, it's not starting something from scratch. I would like to, I forgot the person's name and website. He's from Vancouver, famous for, in the charity sector, mm-hmm. for creating archives of how to grade and index charities, and not just big charities, right, down to the ones that nobody's heard of, in order to find out which one is most efficient, so that if you, let's say, give to the site, or you allow the site to take whatever chunk of money you plan to give to charity, no matter how small it is, it will dole it out only to the maximum marginal percentage. It will not go to charities that are fully funded. Mm-hmm. It won't go to charities that have high admin. Mm-hmm. It will go specifically to where if you give $1, 99.7% of your cents are going straight to the person who needs it. And it's usually, very interesting, it's usually charities that put money, digitally transfer it straight into, let's say, a poor person's smartphone. So you can have a kid in the Congo who lives 3 villages away from the only antenna for the region. Mm-hmm. But that kid, on a regular basis, will get dollars into their bank account. And the few dollars they get a month is the equivalent of me giving you $5,000 a month to live.
Are you doing anything specific to try and help people? Like, is there something that you're actively pursuing at this moment in time, or?
Not every day. Sometimes I do get to consult on a project, or to network and connect people, to broker people who are very good computer scientists, especially when they're in school or right out of school. And the tech industry, even more than almost any other industry, almost, is filled with people who will do something for nothing faster than you can figure it out yourself. And that's good.
It's funny, for somebody who is very much against technology, as what you started off,
everything
you've mentioned thus far has been dealing with technology and trying to help people.
Absolutely.
So here you are, using technology to help.
Yes.
But yet you don't see the social media world as
no, I see this very powerful. It's like I can criticize Facebook, or I can even criticize Twitter in North America, but I'm not going to criticize it the same way in Iran, because context is everything. It's I'll give you an example about something nobody but a few academics would even care about. Postmodernism, which I don't even think is a thing. In the first world, it's a bunch of nonsense. In the third world, it's a tool for power to keep inequality. When it says there's no truth and everything's just power moves, you stop people from organizing politically and publicly. So does that mean postmodernism is evil? Not in the first world. The first world is just confusing and stupid. In the third world, yeah, it's very, very evil. That's problematic. So that's what I really, into a reality there's everything, and reality is not about these singular statements of truth in a vacuum.
You started off as an actor. I met you when you used to work at Starbucks.
Oh, yeah. I remember how we met.
Oh, yeah.
Want me to tell them that?
You could tell them. You could tell people how we met, sure.
I went to shake your hand, and all you did was shake my balls a little.
What?
That's what you did.
Yeah,
you went down and did this with your hand. So
I actually, no, I didn't.
That's what you did. You went up, you know.
So it was really me.
Exactly, exactly. And that's when I knew we'd be friends forever.
No, but you actually came to my acting class.
That's
like
right.
I was teaching acting at the time, and then I asked you to come with me to film a movie in Israel as an assistant, and that's how we became really good friends. But you were in the vanity world. You were in, you were an actor. You have a degree in theater, and why the shift? Why are you no longer in that world? Is there a reason for that?
Not specifically. I mean, I wasn't even that into acting. I went to York because they paid for a full scholarship. Otherwise, I would have worked on a cruise ship. And even before I got into university, I knew that I would...
But you have a degree in theater and English?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, double major. Because I could already, act a little, and I knew how to speak English.
Right. Clearly.
Yeah.
You're making me sound so stupid and funny. Honestly, like I just feel like such an immigrant next to you.
You, think how native speakers feel when I'm using English.
Right.
They feel much worse. And they feel especially bad when they're like, how do you know so many words? And it's for the nerdiest reason. I mean, I remember in grade school, I actually sat down and tried to read the dictionary once. And it was very painful. And I did not like it. But I got through it.
But you did.
Yeah,
but you did.
I didn't get to the end. There's no joke the zebra did it. It's not true. Zygote comes later. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not the end.
But I want to know about the shift, because here you were in like a very creative field.
So it wasn't a real shift because I'd never planned to be an actor.
But you were acting. You were in some of my films back in the day.
It might hurt you to hear it, but for me it was just fun.
Well, it doesn't hurt me at all.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Was it just that? There was nothing that was pushing you to...
Ever since I was a kid, and I enjoyed not just acting, but also directors of photography. I never learned their names, but when I was a kid and I was watching movies and television, I was very conscious of how it's framed. There's a difference between, in Citizen Kane, where they put it low and everybody seems larger than life, versus that green lens and that L-shaped lens that they would use in Requiem for a Dream to make you feel sick and discombobulated and all that. I respected that. But I really, really respected, Meryl Streep's stone-cold face as she would try and digest emotion through a character. So I like that. I never thought I was all that talented, but I wanted to be around that. And I got to direct shows in New York, and I really enjoyed it.
But where did the shift happen? Like, where did you, I don't know, because
I always wanted to do business.
So, okay.
And yet I didn't get a commerce degree.
I see. So,
right?
So why didn't you go back to school to, get a commerce degree?
Because, I considered it, but I thought it would be a lot more efficient. Same reason I use technology, for efficiency. If I can broker something with someone, make a deal happen, they can get paid hundreds of dollars an hour. I just care about owning the shares of the company that pays them and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I really care about.
Okay, but for you to spend 4 years in university.
For fun.
For fun?
Yeah. That's what it was. To me, university...
I mean, I believe you. When I'm talking to you, I know.
Yeah.
I'm shocked because, like, I never found it fun. Right. Like, I need to get this piece of paper so I can hopefully get a job. I'm still looking for work.
That's another. I didn't really study in university. I mean, I read the stuff, but I didn't cram for exams or take it all too seriously. I knew that even if I failed, that there were people in my life I would want to do business with, and business I would want to do regardless of the people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always confident that I would want to go forward, into business. I always knew that. Why didn't I prepare myself better for business? Is all the hubris, the preconscious thoughts and instincts. I went with what I enjoyed.
So you did theater and you had zero interest in it. It was just a way to get through university.
Yeah.
It was your, like, what people take psychology the first year because they don't know what they want to do.
It sounds bad, but pretty much any humanities or Bachelor of Arts, even if you do Bachelor of Arts science like psychology, it's not psychology. Psychology is knowing the limits in a Bachelor of Science degree to what an fMRI will actually give you. To know how much an fMRI does not tell you, and to know the technical terminology, is more important in one lesson than 50 years of Freud failing to understand that introspection does not tell you what the unconscious mind is doing. Not at all. It doesn't tell you that. So all of psychoanalysis collapses for internal reasons. Same thing with behaviorism. I mean, we're getting off topic, but yeah.
I find it very interesting because, like, again, like when I was in school, I did communications. I'm still somewhat using it right now. Maybe it's not a way to pay my bills because I'm teaching now, but it is something that I have an interest in.
Yeah.
And for you to spend 4 years and plus you acted in, I think, about 5 of my projects and you helped produce, I think, 2 of my films.
I mean, to say I helped produce is a strong word.
Well,
I did it's like your gopher was an associate producer because he also made a phone call and helped Gary say this or that.
Right.
Thank you for letting me help and giving me a little credit.
Well, thank you for being there for me. We talked a little bit before about that question we put out there for the audience. I'm going to bring out my phone. I'd like for you to read it.
Okay.
So people are messaging us. Ooh, getting a lot of messages.
Amira is supposed to be here when?
She is supposed to be here now.
14 minutes ago, essentially?
Something along those lines, but it happens.
Sure.
That's why you're here today.
Okay. You could call her on the show. I mean,
I could call her.
Yeah.
I could call her, but I'd rather not. She's going to come in and
because people have made phone calls on
we
the Tonight Show.
We definitely have some things to talk about with her.
Right.
But what I'd like to do is
maybe she's been watching the show and she's like, I don't want to enter this.
That is a possibility. That is a possibility. But what I'd like to do.
2 men who like to hear themselves talk.
Here's what the question was, and I'd like to hear some of the. Maybe you could read out some of the answers.
Okay.
And this came up from because of the whole boobs situation that we brought up.
All right.
I just felt that because we're putting ourselves out there, we're opening ourselves to ridicule.
Absolutely.
People can say, "Oh, look at this fat guy," talking to us, and I don't like his shirt, I don't like his jacket, I don't like his pants, I don't like his socks, I don't like anything about this person. I still want to tune in and say that I don't like him, right. but I'm tuning in anyways. So I decided to put out a question, and I wanted Mira to answer it, but since you're here for now, why don't you read to the audience the question, and then we'll read some of the answers. And please, if you can also give the name of the person that wrote this information, that'd be wonderful.
Gotcha. Okay. Just to complete the point, that's okay. That
we would like. Well, I want to give them credit for even having the guts to answer the question.
Fair enough. Credit or also liability. Okay. Question: do you believe if you put yourself in the public eye, you should be open to ridicule? Yes. No. Sometimes. Please elaborate. We will read out your answers live on the Prickly Pear Show.
Which is what we're planning on doing.
Yeah.
So first we have Karen.
Yeah, Karen.
Let's not give her last name,
Okay.
for the sake of.
So Karen says, it's a long answer, about 3 sentences. So I think little minds will criticize people regardless if you are in the public eye or not. That's true. It's our society, unfortunately. I actually think that's all societies. People rather put you down than build you up. Horrifying. But it's the reality. How much more so will you be prone to it if you are in the public eye? I swear people have nothing better to do than gossip. Should we respond to that answer, or should we have a few answers?
Well, it's up to you, really. It's up to you. Yeah.
Let's have a few.
You take control of this segment.
Gotcha.
It's up to you.
Okay, so you know what, Karen, I'm going to say, yes, it's not just little minds who criticize people. We are all galvanized to criticize and to judge, and unfortunately, even great minds are very susceptible to it. The smartest people in the world often will be the easiest to be taken advantage of by all kinds of pathology in society.
The reason I like this answer, because I'm not a Trump fan, for those that know, but I'm not really a hater either. Like it's not my place. I don't like what he has to say. There's certain things I do like, certain things I don't, but I'm not one to ridicule him.
Okay.
But I do feel that a lot of people are, rather than talk about the things that he's doing or not doing, they're talking about his physical look.
Right.
They're talking about, whether it's hair, his belly. Now there were, what was it the other day, that he weighs 239 pounds, and how could the president? Who cares?
Right.
I mean, one of the best presidents, the president of England.
Taft.
No. But I'm saying Churchill. Wasn't he a fat person?
He was fat and short, so he was
So, I mean,
particularly obese by the BMI.
the idea is we're opening ourselves to ridicule, and people are not focusing on the importance of what the president is supposed to be doing, as
That's
opposed
right.
to judging him on things that have nothing to do with anything.
Right.
The other day, I watched a segment from they did like a magic school bus. Piece.
Oh, that's right.
Did you watch it?
The beginning of Colbert showed
Yes.
the Magic School Bus.
Yeah.
They dubbed it with
By the way,
a lot
Stu
of
Stone
jokes.
is getting, I think he's one of the voices on that show.
Oh, okay.
So he's getting credit for this. But yeah, I mean, that's what we've become. Like, it's more about ridiculing somebody
Yes.
as opposed to really talking about content. And we seem to forget this is the president of the United States. Call him out on things that you don't like how he speaks, how he communicates, what he says, what he does. But we've chosen to focus on his look as opposed to the actions. And that bothers me, but that shows why we deserve a president like this in some ways.
Yes.
Because we are,
No,
by
you're
us
right.
making fun of him, we're showing exactly why we have someone like him.
Now,
Now again, I'm not taking a position whether I'm against it or for him or anything along those lines. I really don't care. Just expressing my opinion.
I get that. It's a very understandable thing you're saying. And it's a very particular sentiment. But what it does is it addresses a broader spectrum. Humor, for instance, is not designed to be perfect. In fact, its word usage is better when it's not particularly astute.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it allows people to infer to something adjacent to that. When people, for instance, are talking about Trump's weight, okay, it comes up in part because of an annual physical. But then people scrutinize it and say, well, he's a liar who's lying again. He changed his height, changed his weight, so that he would be just under what we call obese. And it opens us up to an important conversation about what is he lying about now.
Really? You think that's the reason?
I do actually think that's...
Really?
Yeah, because of course he lies.
Now again, I'm putting this out there. I don't care.
So first, of course, we talk about trivial things, and we do. Let's say he didn't lie,
mm-hmm.
and let's say it was for him to not have lied. Let's say he actually said his honest weight and height.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What we would.
By the way, how many of us
Yeah.
would really put our information, let people know our exact weight?
Well, for the executive office, it's not optional. So when you lie, they catch you. That's
Right.
the point. So he's caught in another lie. He did lie. It's not just him who's lied. He's gotten other people to lie for him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a lie. He is obese, and he doesn't want people to say he's obese. He has dentures. He doesn't want people to know he has dentures. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And we get caught into this gravity well of talking about a person instead of politics. Because the real scandal, of course, is what's perfectly legal. The real scandal, for instance, is a huge tax cut that now, 10 years later, even if you have a liberal, a Democratic Congress, they're going to have to.
So you're saying that
poor
the
people
reason
to pay
that we're
for it.
bringing this up right now is because he lied, as opposed to us judging him.
No, it's it's not in a vacuum. So
Okay.
you get to be right when you say people are very judgmental, and I would acknowledge that. I would not say that you need any other reason People are judgmental. That's why they do it.
Mm-hmm.
However, what you uncover are important nuggets of information.
Mm-hmm.
You find that combing through somebody's sordid history, like let's say affairs, it's not right. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it, on moral and ethical grounds. No one should be judged just for their personal lifestyle, especially in politics. But then you find actually it's related to other information.
Mm-hmm.
You find out that a politician is screwed over their base because they were off having an affair, not because the affair is irrelevant. That's the part.
So here's my question to you. If let's just say he didn't lie.
Yeah.
And he said that he weighed 239 pounds and I think he's 6'2", but somehow he listed 6'3". You think we wouldn't bother him at all?
I'm saying we still would.
We still would.
So I acknowledge your point.
Okay.
It's just because there's a real world, there's a difference between intent and effect, and we can always speak past each other. Even if it's not my conscious intent, unconsciously, my brain loves to just munch on gossip.
So when you put yourself out there, in some ways, you are open to ridicule.
Correct.
So
regardless,
and we should. But is that right? Is that right? Should we just accept it? Should we be okay with it? Should we fight back? What should we do?
You should at least acknowledge that you cannot command it otherwise.
Okay.
So you cannot say everyone should fight their instinct to judge me, because it doesn't exist. The judgments you make in your brain are not just the salacious ones. It's not just she looks like a whore or something like that, which is already an obscene statement or something like that. And of course, to your same point, we should acknowledge that the internet amplifies that. Mm-hmm. If you and I were sitting in a meeting and 50 people are trying to organize each other politically, you're going to have at least one person that loves to talk even if they don't raise their hands. That's highly vindictive behavior, even if it's for good purposes. That's different than people who are totally protected, totally segregated from consequence, and they just get to type, "You're a fat pig." Boom. Right. It brings out the worst in us. Sorry, you have a message.
No, it's not about the message. It's more about I'd like to get the next part, so somebody else has an opinion. So
sorry, Karen, if we didn't answer every part of that. Of course, you're right. It's just I would extrapolate from what you've said and said it's not just small-minded people. We all do it. We're all the time. It's a little like when people talk about the difference between your emotions and your thoughts. Like your thoughts and feelings are different. Barely. In fact, you can't decide to turn right or left unless you feel some way about it. And that's important, that we don't pretend logic is somehow different than our emotions.
So what's the next one? I think it's by Daniel. Let's not read his last name, even though people could probably see it.
He says, yes, it's like everything that has to do with public opinion. Those that expose themselves to the public, and by extension, the potential cruelty of social media, should be prepared for negative attention. Remember, good news doesn't sell. Even before that last sentence, very, very important perspective, very real-world, common-sense perspective.
I'm going to say something weird, but
sure.
Is that fair?
Well, life's not fair. It's not fair the same way racism and sexism aren't fair. But you have to acknowledge that they exist without a sense of irony before you can fix them.
But you try to fix them. Exactly
yes.
what you were mentioning. You try to fix them.
The nature.
How do you fix something like this, where people are clearly judging?
Tough. It's very tough, and also especially because we were talking about politics. I think what people forget, and it's something primatologists actually teach you, pretty much primatology 101. On the taxonomy of species, we're very different. We're shown as different than other primates in our family, like chimpanzees. Mm-hmm. Actually, the difference is very slight. It's not just we belong in the same genus or the same family as them. We're very close to them. When you film their politics, it looks just as ceremonial as ours. When a bunch of primates are lined up in a row and doling out meat down a hill, mm-hmm. It looks exactly like the rules for rulers in any YouTube video you watch. That's what's truly fascinating. That we're so primal that you're not just through acknowledging it going to eliminate it. We can try and design for less of the isms we don't like, but that's very tough.
So since Mira is not here, and I want to touch upon that point, that we are open to ridicule.
Yeah.
And when I brought that point across with the boobs, she was very upset at me.
Which is also natural.
And again, I had no reason to hurt her feelings at any point in time. I was merely making a statement that I thought it was weird that that's what people are focusing on. And then I didn't realize that I was now, by talking about it, putting her down or making her feel weird about it. Like she literally like ripped me one, like telling me, how dare you put this up. But I wanted this to be a conversation for us to engage because I felt that by us being out there, we have to have a thicker skin. You know, if somebody wants to call me fat and they don't like my beard, or they think I'm bald, they don't like my shirt, they don't like my pants, say whatever it is that you want. It doesn't affect me one bit. I'm still going to be doing what I'm doing. But I do understand that I am open to ridicule.
Yeah.
That anybody has an opinion. If somebody doesn't like something, they may express it. Some people don't have the guts to post something, but everybody feels a certain way when they're like, people are listening to you right now. They're saying, you know, I didn't understand half of the stuff that he said to me today.
Right.
You know, and then they could ridicule you for being such a smart person.
Right.
You know, everybody has that.
And in a way, I win because I'm still the subject.
Right.
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 They're not ridiculing me.
So
they're ridiculing me. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next next comment.
You know what? I wanted to speak to what you said.
Oh, please.
Same thing with that intent versus effect. They're two legitimate points of view. It's a real dichotomy between the two. And each is a separate conversation that allows two people to speak past each other. In university, I used to say it a lot because there were a lot of heated debates about, just as an example, feminism.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it very effective to get what would always be, you know, a man and a woman stop talking.
I thought I saw Mira writing something.
Oh, maybe she was watching.
She really couldn't wait for at least for me to be there.
Mira, to mention her,
yeah,
because she should be part of the conversation.
Oh, but she will be a part of the conversation. She will be.
Mira, if you're watching, just write when you will be here, so that.
Yeah, Mira,
if you can.
It's 1:05. We're already an hour and 5 minutes into it. We would love to have your opinion. So.
But I'll say just to mention about your conversation, Mira. So what I used to say in university is to explain is the intent. But to mansplain is the effect. So even if I'm just trying to seek out truth with you in a conversation, that doesn't mean that I'm not reaffirming the stratification socially of women into a kind of modern contemporary slavery, etc.
But this is one of those things I'm talking about. So Mira is again upset about it. You couldn't wait until for us to talk, and I'm like, Mira, we have a show called the Prickly Pear Show. And we want to talk about things that engage people. We want to talk about the things that may affect you. And I don't mind if she says things about me, that's what it's, I'm opening up myself for ridicule. I'm opening up myself for people to question me, judge me, and say whatever it is that they want. And I want to do it in this type of forum. But by seeing her kind of react this way, I always feel like maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should kind of be more reserved about my opinions. And I think it takes away from the authenticity of the show.
Well, it may. Yeah, you can detract from that. There's also a long, but at least in the public conversation, the public sphere, scrutiny is more important than the feelings of any individual. If you have an idea and that idea is wrong on the math, it doesn't matter if it's, let's say, your religion that you believe in that idea. Doesn't matter. The Bible will tell me about qubits. It gets it wrong because pi is not exactly 3. Doesn't matter what you believe.
3.14 something.
Etc. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Try to be smart just for a second because I feel so stupid next to you.
You accomplished it.
I accomplished it just by new 3.143.
Yeah, you put it in there.
Beautiful.
And but it went a little better. Like some people will correct a pronunciation, and then it just sounds obnoxious. Right, but what you did was just specify what it said.
Thank you for making me feel so good about myself.
I think you did a great job.
Let's take a look if there's any. It's really hard for me to read from here.
Comments?
Yeah, if there are any comments,
She
she's the only one.
She said cheese. You really couldn't wait for me, at least to.
I think she wanted to write G's.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
should
would be
should we make a comment about that to try and embarrass her for writing cheese?
I mean, we already did just by presenting it, so we don't even need to.
Got it.
And in a way, I mean. Okay, so it's very understandable that Mira would feel bad because she's being objectified. On the level of the brain, it's because she's not being spoken to. It's speaking past her.
Right.
And that objectification is not in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
It exists in an imperfect social atmosphere. So yeah, it's deeply problematic. And there's no amount of saying, of responding with ideals that is going to disrupt that effect. The effect is real. It's real before any conscious thought, before we speak. And same, if she responds a certain way, the effect on you, feeling diminished.
But that's the thing. Every time I talk, and now since we're opening this up, by the way, if the audience can't see, but you could tell them what I have there. I have an elephant, and I drew an elephant on the board, an elephant in the room.
A particularly happy elephant.
A happy elephant. And the idea behind it is I did want to talk about certain things. I don't mind putting myself out there, but I want to say, like, I don't try to hurt people. Like, I don't have malice behind anything that I say. If people don't like my opinions, they don't like my opinions. I don't try to hurt anybody, especially my co-host. The last thing I want to do is hurt her feelings. I'd love to do this for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
If we can, hopefully make some moolah for this. But in reality, like, I don't know why she gets so upset with me every time I express some sort of an opinion, something that she doesn't agree with. And then I sit there and I go, should I put this up? Should I not put this up? But I'm trying to be as real as I can. I'm trying to be myself. Like, she's changing me. She wants me to look a certain way. And I'm like, okay, fine. I can't dress up the way I want to dress up. I'll dress up the way you want me to, because it's clearly your show too. I care for your opinion. But there are certain things where I just kind of can't hold back, and I feel like I want to be able to talk about, and I feel like I might hurt her feelings if I say it. But then am I being authentic to what the show was supposed to be doing?
You can be authentic and offensive to her privately. And it may not be you, it may just be the participation in it.
Right, but isn't that the whole point of having this show, to be able to talk about things and be open? And
well, yeah, scrutiny is a big part of it. You want to be able to discuss things. It's just like Bill Maher's old Politically Incorrect. He drags politicians onto TV and demands that they disperse with the usual bullshit. Mm-hmm. He wants people to commit gaffes on television.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But there are effects. There are huge effects when they do it, when they participate and cooperate, and there are huge effects when they participate and don't cooperate.
Right.
Regardless. And there are other reverberating effects.
Now, again, I'm smart enough to know that there are certain things that I cannot talk about, right? Meaning, like, there are limits. The thing is, my limits are different than Mira's limits. My limits are different than the audience's limits.
Yeah.
So when do I draw the line? Do I have to say to myself, do I have to abide by my limits, or by the audience limits, or by Mira's limits? And that's where I don't know. So sometimes I sit here, or whenever we have a conversation, that I'm like, should I say it? Should I not say it? Should I say it? And the minute I start to second guess myself is the minute that I stop really participating in the show.
It's not just you don't know it. One cannot know. Every situation, right? Feelings, for instance, are the perfect descriptor. It's initial processing in every situation. Doesn't matter how familiar it seems. How you feel throughout the day is this snapshot in space-time. You don't go backwards in space-time. Right? You don't get to say, well, you know what, I should act like this or I should act like that. That's conscious thought. The reality is you have to risk in order to act. Does that mean next time you have to risk it again? But
that's the thing. No. I know myself, and I know that I will risk it again.
Okay.
And I'll risk it, and I'll risk it probably another 50,000 times.
And she knows
because that's just how I am.
Okay,
but at the same time, how do I convey the message to her that I'm not interested in bringing her down? It's got nothing to do with her.
You can only say that to her, but that will not disperse the feeling alone. It will. You'll just do the best job you can so that she can consciously acknowledge what you're saying. But the queasy feeling of being objectified will not go away. I
know, but like right now we're having this conversation. She's clearly not here, and we're talking about her.
Right.
And I know, knowing her, that she would kind of lose it on me. But I want to be able to have that conversation. I want to be able to, like, right now she's like, oh, you couldn't wait for me? And I'm like, well, it's 1:15. That's like an hour and 15 minutes after we started the show. We've literally been talking for an hour and 15 minutes. At what point in time can we have that conversation? At what point in time, or should we?
Here's the thing. The reality is you can have it whenever you want. You just can't have it free of effects.
Right.
That's the truth. And it never will be free of effects. Even if she comes to a situation and says, I won't let it affect me, then she's being naive. Mm-hmm. So instead, she's acknowledging how she feels. By the way, this is a perfect example of how the internet also creates a chokehold for communication. You and I have mirror neurons. That's where most of the communication is going to happen, whether we like it or not. The internet doesn't have mirror neurons. The internet allows someone to type, And your brain looks at that user interface and applies the worst stressors. The most stressful thing for a primate is not when someone is angry. I mean, that has its own stress. It's when one primate doesn't know how the other feels. When you can't see how I feel on my face, okay, your brain goes through tons of stress. But when I know that you're angry, even if cortisol goes up because there's flight or fight, the brain is able to discern how you feel. Everyone's more comfortable, frankly, with anger than they are with no emotions. And even if consciously we think we're more uncomfortable with anger than with no emotions, we're actually less.
So my question is, to you, since we're putting it out there, what should I do? Because I always feel conflicted about whether I should bring up certain topics. And I feel like I want to be able to bring up certain topics. Now,
apologies are helpful for diplomatic
there we
reasons.
Go. Yeah. We have a door opening.
Is this the perfect time?
This is the perfect timing.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Welcome.
How are you?
Great. This is perfect. See? Her tone of voice, friendly demeanor, right, betrays any notion of true conflict, right? Her saying, I can wait for me to be there, is a joke, right? But when it's written, you have to interpret it yourself.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
How's it going?
Would you like to sit in the middle?
Oh, in the middle?
Sure.
Please.
Yay, just to neutralize the energy a little bit.
That's right.
Okay. Samir, we're just been
Hi,
talking.
everyone.
We're talking about your little comment. That
My little comment.
well, I can't actually see from here. I try to do something different to allow the space. As you can see, it looks a lot nicer.
Very nice.
But I can't see the comments. So, but I did see yours. The reason we brought it up is because I felt guilty.
Oh, can I start off by saying that I'm so impressed with your look?
Oh, you do like this? Okay.
So, full disclosure, I had an advice for Ron to put a blazer on with a fun t-shirt underneath that says some fun slogan to represent your fun, bubbly personality.
Which didn't show up today. We're talking about so much technology.
I know that everything was kind of serious.
Yes.
But I have to commend you that you pull up the look very nicely.
Yeah, you look casual.
It's Casual Friday for me.
Nice.
Ah.
I'm trying to really cover up my boobs.
Oh, fantastic.
How does that look, guys? Do I look
now they're trying to read what it
commentable?
says over there.
It says vivre sa vie, which I assume in French means to live this life, which I intend to do fully and unapologetically.
I love that you came with a positive attitude.
Yeah.
Always.
So what we're trying to do, again, is talk about how I make you feel.
How you make me feel?
Yeah.
It's not really about that.
Well,
it's a much bigger subject.
Bring it up.
Yeah.
Bring it up.
I mean,
I want to be able to talk about it. I don't fear a nice dialogue and a nice conversation about it. I want the audience to know.
I also apologize in advance. I'm going to listen to your words, and then I'm going to try to speak precisely to your wording. So if you ever find me going off track, just raise your hand and change a word and edit it.
Oh, really, whatever comes to your heart, speak your truth. It doesn't have to be
all that
structured
comes
or
to my
very
heart is
official.
disease. So
Well, it doesn't matter. Again,
I
I don't run away from, and I told her, I even left her a message. I said, I don't run away from what it is that I say. I might apologize. I don't realize that I said something or that I offended somebody, but I'm not going to back away because I clearly said it.
that's Ron's biggest problem strategically, is a lack of exit strategy from what he says.
Well, I'd like to be able to express myself, and if someone doesn't like it,
I would say also maybe a lack of.
No, please. The audience is there.
We'll
Everybody can hear it.
No, I don't want to come down
Let's
hard
both
on you.
write down
No,
20
I'd
things
love
about
for you to
Ron
come
and
down
see
hard
if
on me.
they're
Now
there.
we can make this fun. Up until now, it was very educational. I'd love for the audience to hear. So I'll start off, if I may. Since we started doing the show together, not just the Prickly Pear, but when we were on 11/11.
When it was fun and bubbly.
Right, and still people were like,
and entertaining,
and
without offending anyone.
wait,
without
so
stepping
wait,
on toes.
wait.
Can something be entertaining without offense?
Wait.
Yes.
We did the show, and I kept getting messages on a regular basis from people, from my friends and people who watched it, and they said to me, "Who is this girl? Are you doing her? Are you dating her? Man, she's hot. Can I have her?" And I was like, were you even listening to the conversation that we were having? Like, were you laughing at some of the stuff? Were you engaged? Now, clearly, we're talking about
This
food.
could be guys being guys, like totally
Right.
between you two.
So here I am.
Does this need to come up to this platform?
Well, this is what we
That's the
have.
question.
This is why we have a platform.
So I have two questions for you.
Yes, you may. Yeah, go ahead.
We're gonna go, I guess, back not from the comment that you had made 2 days ago, but
Sure.
for the comment that I made right now while I was driving. So
Yeah.
as I was driving back, trying to get here on time, trying not to be a bad driver and being on the phone, I was on a red light. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tune in, see how things are going, see how the conversation is, give my support.
Right.
Not even a minute into this, I hear you bring up that big elephant,
Right.
which me and you agreed that we're going to discuss when I come here.
Right, but we...
When I come here.
Well...
So here's my question.
Yes.
2 questions.
Why couldn't you just, like, what in you couldn't hold until I come here to at least provide my my side of the story or my 2 cents?
So that's question number 1. What's question
Wait, I would like, may I answer? May I answer that?
Are you sure you don't want me
So
to
I'm looking at
answer?
the clock, which we have, and right now it's about 1:20. And you've been here for less than 5 minutes. And I'm looking, I'm like, well, I'd like to be able to talk about it. And I'd like someone's opinion on it. And I wasn't sure if you're even going to make it
Well,
in
you
time.
know, we can always talk about it next time I'm here.
No,
What's the second question?
100%. Wait, 100%. Wait. I want to answer it.
Are you sure?
I want to, yeah. The reason I want to bring it up is because I don't want to offend you. And I want another opinion because I can't ask you, how do I not offend you? Having another opinion from somebody who's our guest today, I figured, hey, let's just bring it up. Now, I kept saying, and we can listen to this again, that I am waiting for you to have that real conversation. But I wanted to say, like, should I keep my mouth shut? Should I not express my feelings? Should I know that, should I hold myself back whenever I want to express myself about something? Because then the show that we're doing is not authentic anymore. Because now I feel like I should dress a certain way, speak a certain way, and it's really not me. If you want to discuss something like you disagreed with what it is that I said about the boobs, by the way, if you really read it and read it again, I was appalled by the fact that this is what he saw, but I kept noticing a trend that's happening. And it was more for me about why is it that people are watching the show and wanting to see your boobs as opposed to the content that we're selling.
Okay, I'm gonna respond to that. So first of all, this platform was created to give content in an authentic way, transparent way, a way that provides a point of entertainment as well as a point of enlightenment, maybe inspiration, maybe a point of disagreement.
That's our goal.
And discussion.
Right.
So certainly the idea is not to say, hold off, don't speak your mind, don't express yourself. However, when the subject is concerning me, particularly my body parts, and we had a previous agreement, and I know you're a stickler for agreements and verbal agreements particularly. I guess I would have appreciated if you would have waited for me to come here so we can have an open discussion without having any reservations, but in my presence, since it is pertaining to my body parts. And so,
by the way, I did bring that up, that this would be something you'd be upset.
And if you already know that, then to me, the indication is, and the reason for you bringing it up while I'm not here is because perhaps the conversation wasn't going the way you anticipated it to go, and you wanted to bring a point that would be controversial, because any controversial point is going to increase ratings or increase viewing or increase...
You think that's the reason I did this?
I don't know. I really can't think of another reason for you to bring it up if you couldn't wait another half hour for me to be here.
I have a perspective.
What's that?
So it relates to something we talked about an hour ago.
Right.
People use conscious reasoning to explain themselves as though people know themselves. They don't. Ron is likely responding to a broad spectrum of what we call sort of stressors, but in not just biology, but neuroscience. It has to do with the fact that he's anxious about that very conversation.
Clearly.
And it's not just one thought, and it's not just words. It's precognitive thought, precognition, that will tell you, for the most part, that he just needs to talk about it.
I felt guilty.
Okay, so in layman's...
No, but I'm explaining myself. I felt guilty about it.
Yeah.
Coming through.
No, well, I felt guilty about it, and I felt really bad that I was hurting my co-host. This wasn't my intent.
Wait, can I just say, you weren't hurting me. I wasn't hurt by you. I just
the message was very how dare you do this?
No, that's not the message. And I wasn't hurt by you. I explained to you, I'm not hurt. I just think that it was completely insensitive and inconsiderate of you, considering that you are a public figure who speaks to people, who educates people.
Right.
I would expect for you to have a sense of tact, which I don't think you exercised in this particular.
But I didn't. But it wasn't when I'm talking about tact. I was merely pointing something out.
You should have, because it's concerning me. You should have, at the very least, had my consensus to discuss this publicly.
Mm-hmm. So I apologize for that.
That would have been tact. Also consideration of how this may affect me or not affect me. Now, I do want to say that I'm not angry at you. And I don't want to, beyond that, I would like to take responsibility partially for this comment, because in my personal growth journey, I discovered that everything that happens to us in our life, we somehow vibrationally attract to our life. We manifest that in one way or another. So I would like to acknowledge that this comment that you posted, or this careless comment made by your friend, somehow I attracted this through my personal behavior and vibration in my life, not through actions, not through wearing a specific shirt, but energetically I needed this situation to come into my life for a lesson. So that I analyzed why this could have happened and how could this affect me, and I can be honest with you, it triggered me. It had triggered me. Why? Because there's probably a lesson that hasn't been learned, or something that I haven't dealt with from the past, for why I get so triggered when somebody decides to talk about my appearance, as opposed to trying to listen to the content that I want to deliver.
Right.
And I would like to first and foremost acknowledge that absolutely I do have the desire to be taken seriously for the words and the content that I bring, as opposed to my look, or as opposed to being the subject of objectification, sexism, chauvinism, all of the above.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I have two options. I can say,
thank you for saying this.
of course, I can say, you know what, I don't want to talk about this publicly. I feel uncomfortable, and I am not going to be the subject of this entertainment. Absolutely off the table. We're not talking about this. I could have done that. But then I thought, what good am I bringing to myself? I'm not healing on that level. Why was I triggered to begin with? I'm also not giving voice to this problem, which I believe is a global problem for women, being objectified, being talked to this way, and being talked about this way. And I'm just not dealing with the issue. And if this platform and my business, me as a person, if I'm about to be transparent and authentic, then being in alignment with authenticity, I need to bring this up, even though I'm uncomfortable talking about this right now.
Right, and I thought that was the premise of why we are even having the show, is to be able to talk about things that make us uncomfortable.
Right, now, so I wanted to bring this up and to say to you that, you know what? I come to you with full intention of having this discussion, despite of how uncomfortable this might make me feel, for a greater good, for me to be able to heal, for people to be able to see, and bring this subject to light, really, because this conversation is an interesting one. It's not the first time a comment like that flies by about me or about any other woman. Any woman watching the show, I'm 100% sure has been subject to being objectified, being not taken seriously because of A, B, or C, external looks versus content. And so I wanted to bring this to light. And then, as I'm driving here, being completely excited to speak about this and preparing myself mentally and emotionally, I hear you bring this up, and I'm not even here to defend my point, and that upset me yet again.
But it wasn't like, again, I apologize that if I upset you again.
Well, I just think that you just couldn't wait, because like you explained, you felt anxious, guilt, whatnot, but I really feel like you need to try to exercise a certain level of discretion and consideration towards your co-host, or towards anybody really for that matter who comes to the show. If you say, I'm going to wait for you to come and discuss this because this is pertaining to your boobs. If I had a comment about your genitalia, I would certainly not be speaking about it in public forum without A, having your consent first. Number two, I would not be talking about this without you being able to at least be here to bring your perspective to the platform.
And again, I understand your point, and I take responsibility for what I've done, and I apologize to the audience and to you for this. This was not, again, going back to what I was saying before, not my intent. I just wanted to bring it up and just ask him for the opinion, and then bring you on the show because I knew that you're coming.
But you know, saying it's not my intent is really not cutting it any longer. We're both adults, and to say, well, I didn't intend to really upset you.
But that wasn't. But
taking responsibility for words that come out of your mouth is probably the #1 skill that I'm trying to master, because I might not have the intent to upset anyone, but if I run my mouth and it's really rubbing somebody off the wrong way.
But wait.
I have to take responsibility.
If we have to really discuss it, what did I?
We have to really discuss it.
No.
We are really discussing it.
If we have to really discuss that point, what is it that I said that was from me
today?
Today, the other day, that really upset you? Like I was pointing out.
I'll tell you.
Pointing out what somebody said to me.
About my breasts.
Right, but it was 100%. I understand. Clearly, it's gonna.
You didn't say, hey, you know what? First of all, nobody had to learn about this conversation that some friend told you about my breasts. So let's just say he ran his mouth to you, did the typical guy talk. Nobody needed to learn about this. You thought it was appropriate to bring it to the platform, to the public forum, to make a conversation about this. Now, understanding I am the subject of this conversation, it would have been considerate and tactful, at the very least, to at least approach me and say, hey, are you okay with me making a comment like that? Like, it's just going to be about your boobs, but are you okay with that? I really think this is an interesting point of discussion. It's a little controversial, I'm not going to lie, but I just feel like it's going to be great for the show.
So it was more about me not communicating with you beforehand, and that's really what it was about.
You just selfishly decided that it's okay.
First off, when you say selfishly, you're acting as if, like, I did this purposefully.
No, I didn't say selfish, meaning not purposeful, meaning without consideration.
We started doing this, around September, when the first time we did a show.
Okay, when I say selfishly, I don't mean purposefully. When I say selfishly, I mean without consideration. Purposefully would have been with bad intent, which I know you didn't do it with bad intent.
Definitely not.
And when you said, hey, I didn't mean to offend you, I said, I know you didn't. I know you don't have a muscle in your body that wants to hurt another being.
No.
But when you do something and you don't think about it twice, that's something my 7-year-old niece would say. Well, I didn't think about the consequences. I'm sorry. I would say, okay, that's fine. You're 7 years old.
But that's the problem.
You're 30.
I know, but that's the problem. If I keep thinking about the consequences of everything that I'm doing,
you have to.
No.
When it's about other people, you do have to think about consequences, such as that's considered social conduct. And if you have no consideration for that social conduct, what place do you see yourself?
And this is what I brought up before: is where does that line? Where is that line? Your line is different than my line.
Well, if it's my line and if it's considering my body parts, then you have to go by my line.
Then this is what I'm apologizing for.
Right. If it's your body, wait. By all means, talk about it publicly.
But that's what I apologized for.
Therefore, why didn't you make that comment? Why did you make that comment again when I wasn't here?
What do you mean?
Why did you again bring up my subject about my body parts when I'm not here? Why?
We were talking about how, like, where the line, where do we cross the line? Like, what can we talk about?
Out of nowhere. I know you guys were discussing something else, and then out of nowhere, you're like, you know what? There is this elephant in the room I have to clear.
No. We there was a segment that started before the elephant in the room.
Okay.
I just pointed out that elephant.
Okay, guys, look, I think it's turning into a personal discussion, and our viewers are probably confused as to why this is happening. Do you want to enlighten them as to what happened 2 days ago?
Yeah, well,
and I'd love to hear your perspective on this since you've been hearing all about it.
So, no, actually, since we started doing the show, we started being online together. Was it the film that we did? Was it the show that we did before?
I think it was the 11/11 show that you came on as a guest.
Correct.
Which was a wonderful experience. It was light, it was flowing, you were funny, we were quirky, we're talking about taboo subject, nobody was...
Yeah, we're talking about poop.
Great
great subject.
There is a lot of, actually, there's a very interesting emerging science about how to use it to fix people's guts.
Absolutely, and as a nutritionist, I can affirm to the fact that having a regular go is.
So the way it started was we started posting like a lot of videos of us together. Me and her were dancing. We did meal prep together. For documentary. People kept seeing us together on a regular basis. And rather than people asking me questions about like the nutrition part or the dancing or the show, they just kept saying... They
were human comments, like, hey, are you dating this girl?
Right, but it was more obscene than that.
And we don't need to necessarily go into, like, exactly what was
said. No, but I'm expressing to you. And at the time,
you expressed that to me before, so
I'm talking right now in terms of the audience. That's what you asked me to do, so please allow me to at least express myself. So all of a sudden, so now I'm noticing that every time I speak to somebody, by the way, this even happened last night, where people keep asking questions about you. I have to tell them, oh, you're engaged. I have to give them like their information. I have to like tell them who you are, blah, blah. And like, I just felt like, are people really not paying attention to the content or whatever it is that we're talking about? And all they're focusing on is you.
Possibly those people who ask those questions haven't been paying attention, and that's fine.
Right. So So this particular person is actually not an Israeli. You know, usually you'd expect it from, you know.
Not necessarily.
And it was like a 56-year-old man who I was just sitting with, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I happened to catch your show the other day." And I was like, "Oh, that's fantastic, yeah." And then he made the comment. The
famous comment, guys.
The comment was, "I like the show. She has big boobs." And now that is not, by the way, I've not that I've not checked you out, but that's not something I focused on. Like I don't think about it all of a sudden. So I was like, Really, that's what you got out of the show?
Clearly, that's what he got out of the show.
Right,
Good for him.
and I merely made that comment to say, like, why are people like that when they're looking at our show? That's the only thing they're focusing on.
Again, you're justifying why you made the
I am telling you, I'm not justifying. I'm telling you exactly why I made it. There's no reason for justification. I've explained to you. Listen, you can take it as you wish. I put it out there as like this was something that was brought up, and I just merely made a point of it. Clearly, we have a show called The Prickly Pear where we can discuss these
You made
things.
a point about my body parts now. You didn't consider to ask me if that's okay to talk about me?
So again, at that time, when I spoke about it, it wasn't like I was thinking about offending you. I was just merely making an observation and talking about it. I apologize that it made you feel uncomfortable and that I didn't ask you beforehand. That I apologize for because I really didn't think we were going to be in this conversation, to be quite honest.
So, would you consider yourself a person who's sensitive to other people's emotions and feelings?
At times,
Do you
but
feel like you have tact?
at
Do you
times.
consider yourself a tactful person?
At times, yes. At times,
Do
no.
you understand, or like, do you now?
By the way,
see
you're
this-
listening to what I'm saying, that I'm saying at times yes and at times no.
I do listen.
Why? Because my line, my tact line, is sometimes different than somebody else's tact line.
Very clearly, but when it
Like we
when
talked about poo for about half an hour, and for those that are watching the show saying, I can't believe these guys are having a conversation about poo for half an hour, right? Like, really, this is what they want us to watch a show? Clearly, I'm going to watch it for her boobs and not for the conversation about.
Not clearly.
about-
Some people were interested in learning about the digestive system. and
Nobody's listening to us because they wanted to learn about the digestive.
most people
You're being
were just
silly right now.
entertained. I'm not
Just
being
no,
silly.
because
most
that's
people were entertained because it's a taboo subject.
exactly.
But nobody in that particular show was eyeballing my boobs.
Really,
I mean, were you?
really, no, not me. What?
Did you get comments from that
Take-
show like, "Hey, that girl's"?
Did I not?
really
Did I not say that right from the get-go? Did I not really express
Guys,
myself?
we're living in a really obscene society. I cannot believe I, as a woman, have to sit in 2018 and explain to my co-host that it's not okay to make comments about my boobs publicly without my consent. Guys, can I have your input? Seriously,
First
somebody
off-
give me something.
By the way, you're sucking up to the audience right now,
I'm not sucking up to anybody.
and that's
Guys,
the part
this
that I
is not sucking up,
apologize
because I would
for.
like interaction from the
That's the
audience.
part that I
Because
apologize
for a long time,
for.
we were now discussing this.
But that's
between
what
me
I
and you,
that's what I
without really
apologize
involving
for.
the audience. If we're bringing it to the social forum publicly, we really should involve them. It's not about sucking up. It's
Okay,
about.
why don't you read some of the comments? I can't read from here. My eyes are hurting.
I'm kind of blind.
Can you,
How about
I'll
Zor, can you
shift
read some of
forward. It's about them joining. Somebody says, interesting, poor kid's smartphone. That's not relevant. It's all about the Prickly Pear show. That's just a compliment. You know what they say, money is power, not really
Not
relevant.
relevant. I think those are older comments, perhaps about something you were discussing before I came here.
Well, no, it comes from after your comment to
Mhm.
streaming death. So you might be right.
Okay, well, we'll probably have a chance to,
I don't think it's relevant.
read.
By the way, what you're doing right now is you're also sucking up to the audience to try and get something. And if
Like
you,
I said, I'm gonna
if you
interrupt
understood
I'm
also
not sucking up to the
why I
audience.
brought up the thing about the boobs was also to get people talking.
I did understand
So-
that, and
so-
which I thought was very inconsiderate to use me as a subject of
You
your
are
entertainment.
you are out there.
If you don't
You
feel,
are out there on this show.
No, I'm
just like
out
I
there.
am.
You can talk about me, but
Mhm.
if you're going to make sexist, objectifying comments about my body,
I didn't say it.
you brought it to the light.
So
You made
what?
it public.
So
what?
But I brought it to the light as a conversation.
It's inappropriate.
But
It's inappropriate. You're free
That
to
was-
speak about
that
your
was-
genitalia
that
if you
was the
so
point.
wish.
That
If
was
you
the
wish-
point of why I brought it up.
I think
Mira.
that if you think bringing an entertainment subject, like
Mira,
a
that was the
controversial
purpose of-
copy, talking about your
You're
genitalia,
you're turning this.
by all means,
no,
please do so. But
you're
do not
turning it
involve me into this.
But you
I
are
really-
here. Look,
I am
this
here.
is our show, right?
I am here.
This
but
is our show.
I want to
We're
say
putting
this.
ourselves out there. People are there. They
also,
will ridicule us
when
whether we
you're-
like it or not. They will be
they-
focusing on whatever it is that they want,
I'm
whether
not
we like it or
going
not.
to agree. Like, for example, I would never, if somebody commented to me privately saying, hey, what's up with like anything that would be inappropriate about you and your body,
Mhm.
I would not put it on a public forum because I have tact. I would have consideration to at least approach you and say, Ron, are you okay with
Now
me
I understand.
objectifying
What
you
is the
this
show
way?
called? What is the show
Number
called?
2, I would like to make a comment about what you said because you repeated it not once, not twice, but 3 times. Oh, you're sucking up to the audience. I am not sucking up to an audience. I'm here to engage in a conversation. Now, so far, me and you have been talking amongst the two of us, have not been engaging the audience. I would like to hear people's comments and what they think about this particular subject. it has triggered me. It personally triggered me as a female. Now, I partially took responsibility because I understand, once again, we manifest our situations. We energetically attract that for a particular reason. In this case, it was a reason for me to learn a lesson of healing, of why I'm being triggered to begin with. But it's a really important subject to address publicly because a lot of women do get objectified. And this is something that I would love to discuss openly. That is why I'm inviting the audience to give their comments. When you're saying this is me sucking up to the audience, it just shows that you're anxious about the subject and you're trying to bring a point across. It has nothing to do with sucking up to the audience.
So you think by you being pretty, like you don't think that there's some advantages to being on the show? You think if it was me and another fat man like myself would be on the show, you think people will tune in as much as they will tune in to see you and I? But be honest. Be honest. You think that your looks don't play any role and for people to tune into the show?
Complete honesty. I don't consider myself a bombshell that when I show up to a show, people are just going to tune in because of my looks. I never considered myself.
But is it the reality? Just because you don't consider?
Well, you asked my opinion.
But your opinion on other people, not your opinion on yourself.
I don't know what other people's perceptions are of me. Some people might think she's got really something interesting to say. Some people might think I really like her hair. Some people might think I don't like her shirts. People have different opinions. Did I ever consider that some sexist comments are going to come? I consider that might be an option. Did I think my co-host is going to make those sexist comments public? Never. I thought
sexist comments? I wasn't the one that said it.
It doesn't matter. You brought it to light. You weren't the one
So
that said
what? We have a show, and this is what we're talking
It's
about.
not part of the show. It was said to you privately, and you decided to make it public forum.
No, but again, my line, and that's what I spoke to him about.
But it's your line. It's not about you.
No, it's not. The point is where do we draw the line? What can we talk about? What can't we talk about? Where do we draw? Like, do I?
It's called common sense.
But it didn't seem like common sense to me because I was merely stating.
It's called common sense.
Why is it common sense?
This is something that you're lacking in this,
Why?
my friend. I have to point out, you're lacking common sense in this department.
Why is it common sense?
If it's not common sense for you to approach your co-host and get my consent to talk about my boobs, then you're lacking common sense.
It wasn't really about your boobs.
It was about my boobs. The comment was about my boobs.
No, but it wasn't. It wasn't about. See, I was using you as the subject to really.
You said it. You were using me.
First off, you're cutting me in the middle of a sentence. Do you know? So.
You were using me.
Using you as a subject to talk about something a lot bigger, which is like why people tune into the show.
I have to say, and I agree with you.
It wasn't really about your boobs.
Well, it wasn't in this case.
It's an interesting subject. The boobs just represented why people are watching the show, why some people are tuning in.
And I can understand your perspective, but I still feel like you lacked common discretion to approach me about this.
So when I apologize for that, that's what I apologized for. Am I correct?
For missing common discretion.
Your idea. For me at the time, it didn't seem like it because I was
now, after me explain.
Well, because I see how you're affected by it. Like if you would have mentioned something about me, it would have no effect. It would have no effect.
Would you feel comfortable discussing, and I'm sorry to bring her up because she's a lovely girl, to discussing your girlfriend?
You cannot bring that up.
Oh, okay.
Because I spoke to you specifically about why.
Okay, fine. So let's just say your mom's or somebody in your family. Do you have a sister?
I do have a sister. Yeah.
Okay. Would you feel it's appropriate to talk about their genitalia or their parts of their body?
We have a show. Who cares? We're talking. Okay. Big deal.
Well, then we just don't agree on very basic principles.
Because we're having a conversation. We're trying to engage people. The idea behind it is really is to allow ourselves to just talk about things. And if you don't like something, express yourself. Say I don't like it. Great. Now we can have a discussion over it. But to say I don't have tact because I said it, why? Because I was talking about something that somebody had said.
It's not something. It's my boobs.
But I understand where you're coming from, and I see that you're offended. If somebody wants,
it's inconsiderate and it's something. That's all I said. Anyways, I would like to hear your perspective.
Why don't we see what people are writing? Like now I see that.
Oh yeah.
Shlomo wrote something. I once played. I really can't see. I once played an extra.
In downtown Toronto, that got sponsors, Air Canada and Ford Focus. Somebody else said Broken Tulips, I remember. Somebody else says Brandon Cronenberg. Okay. Something like that. She's taking another poop. Yeah. So, this isn't...
Don't talk about her poop, because it's her poop. So please don't talk about her poop.
Actually, her point is because she didn't give informed consent.
I understand. And
right? Something like that.
And I get it, and that's
now
what I
you're
apologize
just,
for.
now you're just being a bit of
because
a
that's what I,
prickly.
because that, yeah, because that's what the show's about.
A lot of personality is reducible to physical pathologies, and the grammar we use often makes us look constrained to a very specific position. But about 30 seconds of deep breathing changes everything we think and feel about something. So, yeah, probably even less. It probably only need, I actually think every few seconds there's 300 microns of time in your brain that disperses a lot of your thoughts and feelings.
Where do you get these facts? That's incredible.
Oh, that one is from World Science Festival.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's
Deep breath.
It is fascinating. It doesn't even have to be deep breathing. It's just people get distracted every few seconds for a very short period of time. And Justin, what you can see, if you were to take radiological data from his body right now, you'd see rapid heat loss.
Absolutely.
Because he's no longer being made to feel anxious in the same way.
That's good.
This is very tough, of course, to talk about because there's something called the naturalistic fallacy. Even before we have any science to discuss, we tend to talk about things that are natural with a tone of neutrality. And I think second wave feminism taught us that the personal is very political. And so there's just nothing. There's not a single subject that's safe because social stratification means that, yeah, everything we say, even just me talking to you, is a tool and gets, it's a tool of sexism, even if it's completely pathological and not intended. I was telling him in university, I used to tell people who were arguing and usually talking down to feminists that to clarify, there's the conversation about intent and the conversation about effect. Both are valid, but both speak past each other. So it's my intent to explain to you, but the effect is mansplaining.
So can we then bring it? How does this particular theory relate to the subject of today's discussion since I've come here?
Sure. So Ron is using grammar to justify a particular thinking he has, to reason out to you. Grammar is a diplomatic tool. The reality is he's feeling things that words are not going to grasp at, or we can only triangulate it. On top of that, you're expressing things like should, like the word should or the word tact. These are very particular grammars, and they're meant to convey very particular messages. What are the chances that really approaches how you're feeling? What you're feeling, I can't tell you what you feel, but the idea, theoretically, is what you're feeling is never going to be dispersed just because somebody listens to you or apologizes or acknowledges what you have to say. It's quite the opposite. It's that we need to have these conversations, even though they're largely frustrating.
Right, we need to get stuff off our chest so that we feel like we've been heard and that we feel like we've been understood and we've conveyed our message.
And that there's no larger solution yet. All you and I can do is try. But if we're being honest, we will fail at fixing, let's say, sexism or racism or income inequality.
At a large scale.
Yeah.
But on the smaller scale.
Until it shifts.
Right. But on a smaller scale, I feel it's really important to get to the bottom of where does sexism lie? And is it considered a sexist comment to talk about somebody's boobs on a public forum? Is it or is it not? I'd like to hear, again, I'm addressing our audience. What do you guys think? Is it a sexist comment to discuss somebody's boobs or somebody's private parts, genitalia, whatever, publicly without their consent? Do you feel like it's appropriate? Is it inappropriate? Is there a line that we're stepping over? Or perhaps the line is so thin you can no longer see it? I feel like we've both brought forward our points. I feel like I'm sensing a lot of frustrations from you physically right now, and energetically I sense it.
Yeah, because you used words like lack of tact. You used words like selfish, and because that's your opinion on it, and they're very strong words. Like when you use the word rape, that's it. There's no way of walking around it.
Yeah.
You said you gave me these words, and it's like I merely stated something, and we have a show, and I felt that we can talk about almost anything. That's the whole idea of the show.
can.
And all of a sudden, when I said something,
You can with my consent.
yeah,
when
but
it comes
you're,
to
you're
me.
but again, so express yourself and say to me.
I'll wait till the
No,
end.
go ahead.
You live in a world. It's not a morally consistent universe. And although it's noble that you insist on things like informed consent, even if you get it for yourself, you can't expect it in this world.
Right. And when
There's
you
no
don't
such
get it,
thing.
it's only fair to express your dismay.
Absolutely.
And that's okay to express, and that was the idea
So
behind
my
it.
expression of my dismay is to call it how I see it. And how I see it is that sexist comment was inappropriate. That's it.
Sure.
And you apologize for it, and I accept your apology.
Sure.
I never told you that
it
I
was,
accept
it was
your apology.
no, but it wasn't that. It was
I
like
accept your apology because I know, Ron, that you did not intend to offend me,
here's
to frustrate me,
here's-
to hurt me. You merely ran your mouth without thinking.
here. No, I thought about putting it out there. I actually I did think about it.
So you thought about using me as a subject.
But it
because
wasn't
would be
like-
entertaining.
I think he thought
No,
the
you're
purest ideal is that anything can be said aloud to have an informed conversation or discussion. But that meant that, again, in a perfect world,
In the perfect world. Like
Yeah.
in the Plato's Republic, that would
right,
be
we can talk about
subject of
ideals.
discussion. You
Yeah.
talk, but we're not living in Plato's Republic.
Plus,
we
he
live in
was
a
wrong
society.
about everything, so it doesn't really
Well, I do.
Oh, you think he was right about something? You can always
there is what
I'm
I
trying to lighten this
what
up.
I was trying to do.
Aristotle is just
The reason I brought it up, and again, you could say
Oh.
selfishly or not selfishly. The reason I brought it up is because I feel like by us having the show and having this platform, we should be able to talk about a lot of different things.
I agree.
Now, the reason that you brought up the girl, right? I told you not to bring that up because there was a specific reason, because it's hurting somebody that specifically asked. And again, please do not mention.
I didn't bring
anything.
many names. Or
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But there was something specific, and I told you when we started, that's the only thing you can't talk about. Literally, you could talk about anything. You could talk about my weight. You could talk about anything that bothers me. Anything you want, please talk about it. This was the only thing.
Oh.
Here I was just talking about, again, yes, your boobs was the subject of the conversation, but that wasn't the reason for the conversation. My reasoning for bringing that up is that people are watching a show just based on your look as opposed to the content that we
I
share.
understand.
And that was the reason why I brought it up. You tend to focus just on the boobs. You made the boobs the issue.
The subject.
And I didn't want to do that. Now, how many times, because how many times have we been on the show, and this was the first time I've ever expressed that, am I correct? This was the first. I've been receiving on a regular basis people asking me again, how were you in bed, and all this type of stuff. Like, oh, yes. I get this on a regular, trust me, I get this on a
People,
regular.
your filthy minds.
Yes, these are what
appalling.
that's what people are asking. Literally until last
This
night
is the
when I was,
only couch we ever shared, and that's sitting on it.
that's right, because we use a bed. I mean, you guys are weird. Anyways, the point is, my back will hurt.
We were talking.
I
about
was
it
merely
before.
bringing up the idea of why people tune in to watch a show,
Okay.
and then it came down to the whole idea of if now we are the subject, we're putting ourselves out there. Are we opening ourselves to ridicule? And that's why.
And that's when you have to exercise discretion and sensitivity when it comes to these and there's sensitive subjects because you admitted, you said,
Yes.
I knew it was going to rub you up the
Yes,
wrong way,
yes.
but I posted it anyway.
For a conversation, for a peace, not to hurt you.
It doesn't matter
Not,
really what
but
the
it wasn't.
motives-
It was not to hurt you.
I understand that, and you made it
So
very clear.
it was.
But it's not justifying the action. The motive behind the action does not justify the means does not justify
Ladies and
the
gentlemen,
ends.
I will screw up
Can you
so
please
many
not
times
do
during
that?
this show.
Let me
I will
finish.
screw up so many times, and I'll say the wrong
I
things, and I
really
will
would love to
offend
finish.
people, and I will say things that
Tell
they
us.
don't like, because it's going to continue to happen.
I would like to finish my thought, and you raising your voice and speaking over me to present authority is not going to.
It was
convey a
again.
better
You're
message.
now again sucking up to them. I'm just saying to the audience that I will screw up. That I will. I'm
But
telling
you're
you right
also
now.
rudely interrupting me.
I apologize again for rudely interrupting you. Please go on.
Now talk to me so I can rudely interrupt you.
Please go on.
So again, this is not a matter of sucking up to any audience. I really don't know who's listening. Maybe people have far gone this 2-hour mark because this has been a really long conversation. Maybe nobody's interested in the subject. It's
Possibly.
it's about bringing to the light an important conversation. The conversation, first of all, I'd like to agree with you on one point, that this show is supposed to remove any taboo subjects because we should be able to discuss anything in an environment that everyone feels safe in. Now, when you use your discretion or exercise or not exercise your discretion and take it upon yourself to post something that you understand is a sensitive subject and will potentially negatively affect your co-host, and you still, excuse me, let me finish, and you still go ahead and post it because of higher values, because you believe that the value this conversation will bring will outweigh my potentially being uncomfortable, offended, disrespected, whatever feelings you think might be attached to that. You chose the higher value because in your noble mind, this is a subject worth talking about, regardless of whose boobs we're discussing, your co-host, your mother's, your next door neighbors, whoever. And all I'm saying is that I'm not closed to discussing taboo subjects. All I'm saying is that if there's a subject that you know is going to rub off the wrong way on some person, me or anybody else, please utilize your discretion and approach that person first to make sure that this is rubbing them up okay, like this is okay with them. Because this is like maybe this is your way of being. Maybe that's how you are with people. Like you just say what you want without thinking about consequences. But when you're engaging in a show and you have a co-host, I mean, if you want to have your Ron Furman show where you talk about anything without considering people's feelings, by all means. In this show, I am your co-host, and therefore it would be great and appreciated if we both were on the same page and you didn't go ahead and take the liberty of talking about my boobs without my consent. Does that make sense?
It sounds
so that
like
part,
a grammar of a device or constructive criticism. So that part you've already acknowledged.
Again, that part I already apologized for. Because now I know.
Is there something
No,
outside the scope?
My worry is, and again, like we talked about the show, like that there are certain things that I'm going to be saying and you're going to be saying that may offend the audience or may get them to talk, or they agree or disagree, whether I take a liberal stance or a conservative stance or whatever it is on anything, that I might be offending somebody. And if I sit here just thinking that I'm offending people on a regular basis, speak your mind. Present your opinion. Talk to me. That's what we're here. We have a forum to be able to talk about things. I acknowledge the fact that I hurt you by saying it again. It was not my intent. Your boobs were merely the subject of the conversation. All it was like, why do people watch the show just to see a pretty girl as opposed to really watching for the content? That was what I was trying to present. So when you were like telling me that it was like tactless, I was like, I was merely using you as just a subject.
Do you notice, again, not to be picky on words, but you notice how you use the word merely? Do you know what the word merely says?
But merely is for me.
Merely for you.
Merely for me, because that's my line.
What you're talking about my
But it's my line.
But you're talking about my body. Therefore, when you're saying merely, when you're saying merely, you are reducing my worth and my subject to merely nothing.
It has nothing to do with your worth.
It has to do with my body.
It has nothing to do.
You're mentioning my name.
The content,
it has to do with
the content has nothing to do with your worth.
I absolutely disagree.
It was actually about what people are. That's okay for you to disagree.
No, but the fact that you're saying merely talking about your books, you're reducing the importance of the subject. This is an important subject. It should be discussed, but with my consent is all I'm saying. It's not merely talking about your genitalia, merely talking about rape, merely talking about whatever.
What was the purpose of me putting it out there? What was the purpose?
I don't know. You tell me, because that was your initiative. I have no idea.
Are you ready to really listen?
He wanted to discuss.
I think you said it maybe more than once.
Well, no, because you said merely it's for discussion, so clearly you weren't paying attention.
Not clearly and not merely.
Clearly you weren't paying attention.
Can I take a stab at it?
Well, no, but let me before.
Sure.
Since she asked me the question.
Sure.
It was more about why people tune in.
That question. You're answering
I don't need to know because
I didn't ask you that question.
No. The question was, why do people tune in to watch some of these shows?
Whose question was that?
He was asking me, and then he brought up the episode with you.
Oh, right. So it was a good
as a
general
reference.
question.
Yeah, and what he was trying to point to was a sentiment I expressed a couple of minutes later. There's a reason the most common denominator is also the lowest.
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah.
And I was like nodding while I was driving.
This is important.
True. Low denominator.
Yeah, we live in a reality where we objectify people.
Yeah.
Sexist objectification is on a certain spectrum, but it's a much wider and broader spectrum.
For sure.
Not only that, so we've been objectifying each other forever. We've also been problem solving for something like 75,000 years with a level of language not before seen in animal species. It's simply the case that the way we communicate are these very narrow portholes They will never be perfect. They will always be fragmented. Fast forward to just a few hundred years ago, we started insisting on these discussive models where it's not just the old style of argumentation, but it's this extra scrutiny. All ideas tend to reduce the individual, unfortunately. So, and when you say reduce, on the level of the brain, you're made to feel objectified.
Because it's triggering something.
Of course.
And if it wasn't triggering me at all, that means I have no triggers about the subject. And I'm the first one to say, if I'm being triggered, if I'm talking about an issue, and you're triggered and you have an emotional response, that means something inside you is in conflict when it comes to this subject.
And that cognitive dissonance is not something we can disperse easily through conversation.
Absolutely.
We can only hope to have a therapeutic effect. So
Sure.
his intent is to
Bring
discuss.
bring it to the light.
The effect on you is pain. The intent of you to bring up tact
To
is,
heal.
yeah, or I mean, I would have whitewashed that, turned it into something that's sterile like constructive criticism or professional advice or something like that.
It's more personal than that.
Sure, thank you. But no amount of your intent will disrupt the effect.
Agreed. So then
So,
at what point does
not
it
false
become a moral
equivalency.
question of when is it morally acceptable to take any idea, understanding that it would ultimately reduce a person?
Unfortunately, it's case by case.
So then morality, when it comes to discussing subject, do you need to consider morality or do you need to put it aside altogether and use your subjects for a greater good? In this case, Ron used me as a subject for a conversation of a greater good to discuss the subject of why are people tuning in. Is it for looks or is it for content?
Right.
Um,
My comment at the time was that that's on the spectrum too. People tune in actually because it's convenient. Right? Technology has delivered it to them.
Right.
And then what follows subsequently is conscious reasoning, which usually doesn't go very far to explain anything. So that's where we get. Yeah. There probably is room for tact, but with the arena today, if I had to make a prediction, it's that Ron would not do better in a world where he doesn't bring most things up. Instead, it's a world that actually expects anyone to have a didactic monologue, which uses everyone, actually does reduce 20th century notions of disclosure and informed consent to the ash heap of history.
you know,
Unfortunately.
I understand your outlook. I have a bit of a more optimistic outlook on humanity. I believe through open forum discussion, we can come up to a way of dialogue that will be both idealistic in nature or be able to touch on idealistic subjects as well as be respectful of the subject of who are being involved in the conversation.
But do you know that you're not being respectful by actually putting words onto somebody, by calling someone selfish, by saying the word tactless? You're actually putting these words out there and you're saying this is who this person is.
I call it how it is.
No, you call it how you see it. And that's the difference.
How it is.
The same, no. How it is, again, now you're interrupting me.
Are you asking for an apology right now?
No, I'm not asking for, I don't need your apology. I don't need anybody.
So why are you angry right now?
Because I'm trying to explain, the minute you start labeling people, that's how you see them as. And in my opinion, again, that's your opinion on things, like that someone's saying something that's not tactful, right? And you know, you could say that I lack tact, you know, with the way I speak. That's perfectly all right. And I never claim to.
And I don't think you would object to that. You know that's your manner of communicating.
At times, because I don't sit there going, let me think about every word that I say, especially on this open forum. That's why I created this. That's why I created this show, in order to be able to speak about these things on an open forum. And even if you disagree with somebody, say, hey, I disagree with your position. Totally all right, open to disagreeing. But to have labels.
It was beyond this.
To have label. No, it's not beyond.
It was beyond.
It's labeling people, and it's not the first time. Clearly, you're labeling people, and you're making them see that this is who they are. No, it's not the first time. Yeah. I mean, we know each other for a long time, so you know, like it's not the first time. And again, I'm not here to talk.
But it was beyond that.
It's your perception on it. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's your.
No, it's beyond that.
It is your beyond that.
There's an idea.
It is your line. It is your line, not my line. Your line.
Yes, but
because
when
if you didn't have,
about me,
if I may,
you have to consider
if I may,
yes.
If that was not a trigger, thank you for allowing me. If that was not your trigger, would you act towards it the same way?
I'm acknowledging first and foremost that this was my trigger.
No. Forget.
But you crossed the line.
Stop it. If this was not your trigger.
What am I stopping? You asked me a question and I just responded.
If this was not your trigger, no, you didn't. You said I acknowledge it is my trigger. That's not answering my question. If this was not your trigger, would you have made a big deal out of it the same way?
Okay. Would I have made a big deal of this?
Yeah, the same way.
Not the same way.
Not the same way. So what?
This was a personal trigger, which is why
I didn't know.
A personal issue. It's not simply a matter of.
So that means that I could have not known your line. I could have not known your line because I could have not known your line.
Why can't we have a normal discussion without you snapping and being so reactive?
You're not answering. That's why.
I think that is normal.
You're not answering.
That people actually don't stick to enlightened monologues, and instead they're deeply charged.
Deeply charged. Yeah, it is. I've experienced that in my life. I have to say personally, my way of communicating in discussion is I try to move away from being emotionally charged. When I feel like, and
that's
again,
horseshit. That's
when I feel a lot of emotion coming up within me, I really try to pull it down and speak from a place of calmness, because only from a place of calmness can you deliver a message that is authentic and true. When you're up in your head, your blood is pumping, your cheeks are red, clearly in your case because you're really heated up right now, you're speaking emotionally, and sometimes you may say stuff that you don't necessarily mean. And in this case is a clear example of that. Now, to answer your question, I answered again, but I'll clearly answer your question.
Clearly answer it.
If this was not pertaining to my body parts,
right,
and it didn't trigger me personally,
right,
I don't think that I would have reacted the same way to this comment, which I still would have labeled as being sexist and objectifying to women in general. However,
by bringing up a point?
Can you please let me finish? You asked me a question. What?
No, because we'll bring up a point. I wasn't being sexist. I don't know why you're saying it this way.
There can be an unintentional.
I feel like you were.
But how?
Unintentionally.
How was I being sexist?
It's important. It's actually important to note. Primates feel like adjectives are about them, but actually it's just about the incident. So something can be incidentally or ironically, let's say, racist or feminist or sexist or something like that. And part of the problem is in reality, use words and it makes it feel like they're stuck on you and your body and who you are. But all of that is just metaphysics. The reality is if you and I are being sexist, and it's unintentional, and somebody says it to you, you feel bad notwithstanding, it could still all be true in abstract, even though you're not being a sexist.
So by this, I just want to clarify. I want clarification. I pointed out something that somebody said something sexist. I pointed it out there. I made the choice to put that in the forefront.
So wait, you're now acknowledging that that's a sexist comment.
Yes, what he said was sexist.
When his friend,
not what I said.
Oh wait, we should get your consent. Are we allowed to delve back into?
Yeah, we've been doing that. Thank you. But what he said was sexist, but what you said was not. That's ironic.
Did you read what I said? What did I say that was sexist?
The way she put it, when she came here, the way you initially put it from your grammar, I got it wasn't that you intended sexism. It's that sexism happened as a necessarily followed from just bringing the subject up.
Correct.
In the same way that fear-mongering might not be intentional when the news tells you that there's a category 5 or something.
Guys, we're here to have discussions about certain things, and if I bring up a subject, I shouldn't be held accountable because I'm bringing a story that somebody else said, and now I'm responsible. Why? Then what is? So what is it? Where's? That's what. Again, this is where the conversation is. Where is that line? So what do we talk about?
This is
anything you could say can be held against you. Anything.
That's the reality.
Because somebody sits there and goes, nope, didn't like what you said. It sounded offensive to me.
That's right.
And we live in this world of it's offensive to me.
That's right.
So if I'm going to sit there and go, oh, anything that I say, I'm offending somebody.
So you have to exercise discretion when it comes to talking to other people.
Yeah. After all, we're trying to explain why these things happen and how they happen.
Right.
Not should you be made to feel bad or not. The reality is you shouldn't feel bad. You should just have constructive. In an ideal world, you'd have constructive criticism. There would be inputs in your brain for it, and your hormones wouldn't respond with any kind of stress or anything like that.
Right.
What I'm seeing is, when I used to work with college campuses, if people, you want to stop a conversation, somebody would say, I'm offended. And that's it. And it would be like, you're offended, so we can't talk about the subject. Because everybody can be offended.
What you're saying right now should be acknowledged, and everything is case by case.
Yeah.
The reality is, for instance, the world sometimes turns on bad decisions made by central powers that didn't even want to make those decisions.
Right.
So, yeah, actually, it's perfectly consistent in the universe that people can take a tool like language and use it to obstruct proper communication. That's going to happen most times.
But I think what we're also talking about is the semantics of what your words convey as a message. So understanding you are not intending to sound or come across as sexist. You are not. I'm not calling you sexist. The comment, as you acknowledged yourself, was sexist. You decided to bring it up to the light, and you decided that it would be for the greater good of the world to bring it up to the light, even though it was about your co-host. But all I merely said, which you have already acknowledged and just regurgitating so that we can put an end to this conversation, is that you did not exercise discretion because it was pertaining to my body. So you did not consider it appropriate or necessary to ask me, am I okay to be the subject of this particular discussion when it comes to a sensitive topic like, objectifying women. So you said, I apologize for making you feel this way. I apologize that I wasn't sensitive. I accepted your apology. We're good moving forward. The whole point of this platform is to discuss taboo subjects, but we also have to exercise our human discretion.
But that's the thing, that's exactly where I started this off. That sometimes my line, and again, I go back to that line, is different than your line. What I
All
think,
the time it's different than mine.
right,
So
sure. What I mean is, like, this discretion that you point out, so if I'm going to say something in the future that goes against what your line is, then I'm at fault. As opposed to looking at it from like, wait a second.
I want to make a differentiation.
Right.
You can talk about any subject that you wish to,
Yeah.
and you don't need my consent because you're free human being to talk about anything, freedom of speech, yay. But I'm differentiating the subject of conversation here, which was particularly my body parts. Do you see the difference?
Yes, I do.
That's all I'm saying.
That's what I acknowledge.
That's all. So then why are we still regurgitating, chewing this over and over again?
Because you said tactless,
it was
selfish,
correct,
and it wasn't.
Because I think your motivation for posting that was selfish because you said, I'm going to use you as a subject because I think it's an interesting point of discussion. You used me as a subject.
No, you became the subject of the conversation.
No, you used
it could have been if somebody would have saw me and said something about, I don't know, my double chin or something like that, or my cheeks or whatever it is, and somebody judged me. And I'm totally, again...
It's not sexism to talk about your double chin or your belly.
But
it is sexist to talk about my breasts.
Wait a second, if somebody, that's fat shaming. I'm not going to call it sexist, but I'd say fat shaming.
Well, now you're pushing it.
No, I'm not. If somebody's talking about
making
that,
chauvinistic, sexist, and objectifying remarks is not the same as making a comment about your double chin.
Excuse me.
Not the same.
You don't know. I'm offended. Because I'll tell you why. Because I think I'm playing devil's advocate for the reason. Because I'm
making this theatrical.
You never lived as a fat person. You don't know what fat shaming is. I never lived as a woman, so I don't know what sexism is.
So then exercise discretion.
But it's
done. Point in case.
No, the point is let them speak. Let them express themselves. Allow them, because that's the truth. That's the truth.
So when I was engaging with the audience, I was
let them.
Now that you're engaging with the audience, it's not
let them speak.
Why the double standards?
Because we can have a discussion about it. That's
Why
the
double
idea.
Standards?
You closed the door.
I did not close the door. I said, please have a discussion about it.
You closed the door.
And you labeled me as sucking up. How come?
You were sucking up to them.
And now you're not.
He improvised.
I'm sucking up to you.
You're using the exact same tactic.
Perfect.
If you want to call it that.
Then here you go.
I don't think it's sucking up.
I could be here. I could be here and say yes. I'm sucking up to the audience right now.
So why the double standards, Ron?
I am Mr. Double Standards.
But why?
Because that's the way I am. There you go. But you see, I can still admit it. I can still sit here. I think we all have double standards.
It's always going to feel like you're hitting a wall because it's really about two slightly altered contexts, right? Intent and effect. Noble intent does not equal noble effect.
That's right. Clearly,
as simple as that. Yeah. And this conversation is really just about context-specific reasonings.
Right.
Not about words that are so easy to generalize throughout all contexts, even though there are a few of those in this conversation.
But very content-specific.
I have a scientific question, which we will not be able to answer today.
Sure. But put it out there for them.
How do we design discussive models of conversation to avoid pitfalls like the isms we don't like? That is a very fascinating subject that I have no real expertise on. And so we're not going to get there today.
Why don't we move on? If I think we kind of like hit this one and killed them. Let's talk about something positive.
Touchdown.
Okay.
That one.
Thank you.
So something positive. Let's bring it up. First off, what we try to do right now is also to bring other people who have a show for us to come on your show, for you guys to come on our show, so we can cross promote. You could talk about anything you want. Thank you for mocking me.
We come to your show, you come to our show.
The idea is to really cross promote, to talk about certain things that are affecting you. You know, the good things that you're doing out there. You know, clearly this conversation did not go the way it was supposed to go.
Why? I'm sorry. Why were you attached to a specific outcome? I'm not. I think it went the way it was supposed to go because it went the way it should have gone. You clearly were attached to an outcome, so you're saying it didn't go the way it was supposed to. What was in your mind the ideal outcome for that conversation? Just curious.
So I'd like to move on off of it, to be quite honest, because you're gonna
maybe for the
you're bringing me into the tornado. Like you're literally bringing me in. Like I'm a house. You're just picking me up and asking me, and then you'll be offended by what I have to say. So let's move on.
I won't be offended if you're talking to me like a normal, respectful person. But all I'm asking is what was the outcome that you were hoping? Because you clearly made a statement. So
we talk about why really people are tuning in to watch a show.
Right.
Are they tuning in for the content?
Why don't we ask that question again?
Or are they tuning in?
And that's a good question. Why don't we ask that question openly again now that we've discussed, we got the elephant out of the room, finally. Elephant that you put in the room to begin with.
Yes,
Great.
You got it.
We dealt with the elephant. The elephant had left, although I love elephant, would have loved to have some tiny one here. Now I'm open to asking this question. Really, guys, why are you tuning in, and why do you think people tend to tune into any show for that matter?
Well, now I think now that people are tuning in to see us arguing with one another, because
that must be very entertaining.
So it's a lot more entertaining than just talking about why technology serves us well or does not serve us well.
You get
a good servant and a poor master. That's the lesson of technology.
Poor master.
Good servant, poor master. So you can use tech, but you are also used by tech. So I kind of had a rundown that I put out there, and
it's like the manifesto of the Unabomber, just as a side note.
Oh, did he have that phrasing?
Well, kind of. He talked about technology as being sucked into it, as being used for good, but we ultimately become slaves to that. Which I just finished watching the Netflix series. Very interesting. Highly recommend.
That's good. That was good.
Yeah.
If I remember from his manifesto, it is a tangent. Sorry.
That's okay. Do your thing. You guys are here with me.
Because I really perused it. It's like Mein Kampf. I didn't read every single page, but I'm like.
You actually read it? I was just like listening to what they read in the show.
Oh yeah, no, I read a long time ago. He relied on a type of morality called Rousseau's morality, and it's this individuous perspective, and it leads to Henry David Thoreau and other people, and it's this idea that the world can pivot on the attention of a singular mind, and unfortunately what we find in the real world is not really like that. So it's naive for, I forget his name, who ended up being the Unabomber.
The Unabomber? I think it was Ted Kaczynski.
Ted Kaczynski's perspective unfortunately was somewhat naive in how he defined what he was talking about.
You think so?
To a degree. Of course, you can be right about
some
tech.
Ideals there that he was discussing.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people tended to agree with him on that subject once the manifesto was published.
That's true. You can't agree.
Not to justify his bombings.
No.
At all.
No. And his philosophy is not trash. There's something to it.
Right.
It's just, in philosophy, it's not enough to agree with an ideal of what someone's saying. You have to have a consistency, like congruency.
Congruency, love that word, and you're absolutely right when it comes to philosophy.
Yeah, and very, very tough because there's a hard wall between what we think and feel and what is.
But bringing it to layman's terms and to today's society, because that did happen maybe a little over a decade ago.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we are trapped? Because I wasn't here for the technology discussion. Do you feel like we are slaves to technology?
Yes, but the technology is not the slaver itself.
What is the slaver?
Technology is the whip.
Is the mind our nature?
Yeah, that's right. And in particular, institutionalization, which sounds very ugly when I use it in this context.
How do you mean it
then? Central planning is the only way you and I have a civilization, so we can feel pretty safe talking.
So
right
governments, society.
Yeah, government
rules.
follows later, but
Right.
even 20 people problem solving in a band, in a tribe, we all agree to shit here and not there, and one
That's
person's
pretty much how we started off.
Exactly.
Right.
And richest person's
back
hut is closest actually to where to shit, but
Right.
is still upwind from it.
Right.
Right? There's all these three-dimensional concerns. That central planning, that instinct, necessarily enslaves a lot of individuous nature.
Just the planning itself, not including
That's right.
technology.
Yes.
Because
you
it
and
gives
I,
constraints.
yeah, and there's when our synapses fire to communicate with each other, we sacrifice a lot of individuous nature. We spend a finite amount of calories to say yes to one another, and that means that
It might not be in our interest, but we have to because we're part
Right.
of society. We agree to these rules.
yes, even
Right.
unconsciously.
Right.
Forget the conscious stuff. The agricultural revolution was very conscientious, right?
Mhm.
People got sick and died more often, but they said, hey, we're really safe and we just stay in the same place, and it's a lot more efficient.
Right.
So a few generations later, it paid off. But it's everywhere, and it includes in the language we use to speak to each other, the roles we inhabit, the agreements we make. Today's economy, it's not technology's fault, but technology is part of this. There's something called securitization. You don't have a modern economy without it. But with it, you have market bubbles and crashes and poor people getting
Can
poorer.
you elaborate on what you mean by securitization for?
Oh, if you have enough fixed assets that are the type that society values, homes, dealerships, airline leases, receivables, anything that has a receivable.
Assets, okay.
Yeah, specific assets,
Okay.
tangible assets. You
Okay.
get
Liquid.
well, the beauty is you don't have to liquidate them. You
Okay.
keep owning them. Let's say you own them and you're rich.
Right.
I'm the bank and I say, congratulations. How'd you like to sell the risk? And you go, oh, that's perfect. So depending on your assets, they get rated. Other people come and you create a market for that. And it's really just a giant
So it's a
version.
bubble.
Well, bubbles come from that.
Right.
Uh,
Because you're creating a market based on somebody else's
you create
Risk.
futures.
Yeah,
Yeah,
futures.
people buy the risk.
future contracts. Very interesting.
Yeah. An easier to understand version is farmers. You farm, you do the work. Do you really want to be beholden to the weather? No.
Right.
Along comes friendly money, right? From who? You don't know. You never meet them. But they will buy your risk. I
Right.
bet your soybeans will be this high and
Right.
worth this
So you
much.
either bet for it or against it, and whoever wins collects the money.
Exactly.
It comes the
But
game.
you win by selling the risk.
Right.
Are you bad?
Because you're getting money for it.
Right.
You're human.
Exactly. So human nature does this.
Right.
You've just let me mansplain a lot of the economy to you. Do
Thank
you
you for
know?
mansplaining it.
Sure.
Women's-plaining it. Mansplaining it.
Person-splaining it.
Person's-plaining
Or we can
it.
also mock it, like maybe we should change the job description from mailman to person.
I
Right?
know, right?
Right.
Like how far do we go?
Exactly. And even that is just
with
a way of
linguistics and semantics of what is it really?
semantics is an important part of that.
Right.
Yeah. Because it affects our reasoning. It seems trivial like words.
Yeah.
Really affects things.
Now that this is not engaging and I'm clearly listening, can we go back to the rundown?
You want to share time on shows?
No, that was done with. What I'd like to talk about is we spoke briefly last week about holding ourselves accountable to certain things.
Okay.
So I want you to, I know that you came up with like a year plan or something that you want to do this year, but I want it to be something real, tangible, something that over the next 3 months you will try your best to keep. What I told you was my goal is to lose weight, and I plan on starting today to really take care of my weight, to diet properly, work out more, and try do as much as I can. And I want to be held accountable for it.
Okay.
What is your goal for the next 3 months? Did you come up with anything?
It's interesting. To be honest with you, I haven't given a very a lengthy thought to bringing up something to the platform today,
Mhm.
because I did create a plan for myself for this new year. And there's a lot of things on my
To-do list.
yeah, I guess you could call it that, but it's more like a vision board.
Mhm.
Things that I'm manifesting for my life, for myself, for my career. So I would say rain check until the next show to come up with my particular thing to be accountable for.
Done.
Simply because if I say, well, I also want to lose weight, it's not necessarily something that is on my big list.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's something that I'd like to talk about on a weekly basis, because just to see how, to hold each other accountable, to see how things are progressing. So if, let's just say there are difficulties, like when you were my nutritionist, and I was having trouble like laying off of the soda, right? This was like my big problem. It wasn't so
You're
much.
still drinking it.
Yeah, but for the time that I did the experiment, I
Right.
was
So
drinking
that time you were drinking
I-
less of it.
very much less, like to a point where almost nothing. But the point is, but again, you presented a challenge, and I stuck by it, like anybody, right? I went vegan for 3 weeks, and you said for 2, and I went an extra week. So yes, thank you very much.
And you felt how doing this?
I felt well.
And this was just for a short period of time. I never intended for you to go vegan, right?
Right.
We just wanted to eliminate the culprits for inflammatory reactions within your body, since you were dealing with a lot of physical manifestations of inflammation within your gut.
Correct.
So how did that affect you? Just curious.
It was actually okay.
Not bad, right?
It wasn't bad at all. I wasn't expecting it to be bad. It was just the pressure of having to film, the pressure of not sleeping properly,
Not having easily accessible meals.
Accessible meals. Like I never even had time to cook anything because I was so busy running around.
And not even the breakfast jars, like not even the.
Well, we did it at some point in time, but like literally, like I would come home at 4:30 in the morning, and by 7 o'clock I'd be out filming. So if I had somebody who was there to make my meals, maybe it would have been a lot easier. But now I had to go and drive around and look for vegan food. And,
I remember you were texting me, is this Subway okay? Or is this salad okay? Can I take the cheese off?
But I did take it, and I did everything that you asked me to do.
Good, yeah.
So, and I did lose the weight, and then everything kind of worked out great. But now, having other stresses and other things in my life, I've put everything back on. So hopefully, I can commit to at least 3 months. After. And by the way, I mentioned the 3 months, but that is my goal. I started my day with a shake, and by the way, there's no coffee in there. It's just water.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
I'm not against coffee though. I actually personally love coffee.
I actually am completely against coffee.
Why?
But that's a totally. I don't think it's good for me.
Coffee breath?
No, not even the coffee breath. It's I smell like a teacher when I do that. No, my heart.
What does the teacher smell like?
The teachers smell like coffee. It's just like a thing. If I'm offending any teachers out there by saying this,
please come and breathe on us. Breathe on us. We just want to smell your breath.
Every teacher I know smells like coffee. You think they'll smell more like apple because they receive apples from their students, but they don't. They smell like coffee. By the way, I'm back to being the funny guy.
Oh my gosh, I missed that person.
Yeah, that person will come back because I'm gonna try to stay away from that offends me right now. I'm going to try my very best to try and be more comical than just controversial.
I know, I saw a comment today, like, smile, ShaRon.
Again?
Yeah, not this morning when I was driving.
Again? I keep telling people.
I don't know if it was again.
No, because I kept saying to people,
I'm
smizing. It's not so much about smiling. I want to be real.
I think you were smizing.
I was smizing. Do you remember that?
Smiling?
From it's last year, right? Or the year before, smizing?
I don't know where it's from. It's smiling with your eyes, but not with your mouth. So you're like...
Yeah.
It's
no, I've never heard of it before.
Something called in science the Duchenne smile. It's like you can tell that a person is more authentic when they squint as they smile, as opposed to the Pan Am smile.
Okay, got
right,
it.
which is they're taking your money with their eyes.
I'm so happy right now.
Yeah, and so there's a technique of
somebody's writing. I can't see what.
I'll read it in a moment. There's a technique particularly for female hosts.
We've been doing this now for two and a half hours.
By creating those little folds here.
Yeah, but they still have to keep talking. So smizing, is faking authenticity on purpose to make it look more authentic.
Okay.
So we've been doing this now for 2.5 hours. That's way longer than we expected, but clearly,
let's cut it down by 2 hours next time.
Exactly. So if we can be here on time. No.
Okay.
Again, he's taking a shot at me.
Yes, because that's for fun. Stop being too sensitive.
You took a shot at me last time.
Next time you guys are going to argue about being on time,
and I'm going to
argue about space time.
So
it was taking a shot when you said. There she is. She put her face on finally.
Yeah. Actually, that's. I didn't say she put her face on finally. Like, I said, she should put your face on. Right. Why? Because she was sitting here for half an hour playing around. Now I don't use makeup. I don't put on makeup. And if I need to go to the bathroom, I go to the bathroom way before.
Clarification. I was not playing around. I was trying to set up the technology that was.
And I told her, don't do this a half an hour before. There's not going to be any changes. Just go and get ready, and we're going to go with what we have.
Stubborn.
Yes, you were being stubborn, and then you went 2 minutes prior to being on show to put your face on. And when you knew it, and I told you specifically, we're going to go live at 12 o'clock. Go hurry up, and you came in 10 minutes after.
5 minutes, but yeah, for 7 minutes he kept on rambling about me being in the bathroom, and God knows what I'm doing in there. I mean,
what else do you want me to talk about? I spoke about the set.
There's a gazillion subjects to talk about when you're here on your own.
Great. I'd like to see you. I'm going to come late next time to my own studio, and I'll just have you ramble about nothing. Nonetheless, and anyways, let's move on to the next topic. Let's see what people are writing, because we didn't even get a chance to respond.
Interact with our audience.
Yeah, because it's very important for us. Audience participation.
Guys, you get stickers and stars for participation.
I don't even know.
What do I get for showing up?
Oh my gosh. We have to come up with some giveaway package to our lovely
For the
guests.
guests?
Yeah.
Giveaway package? What are we making money after this?
No, a giveaway package, like a gratitude for their time. Nothing to do with making money.
Yeah, their information is out there. Thank you for your information. The same
If
way.
I used social
You know?
media, maybe it would be useful.
If you guys want,
Here's another scary thing, my friend. It doesn't matter if we're on Facebook's platform. Facebook is one of the primary lenses and conduits through which the PRISM surveillance system is
Thank
used.
you very much. The primary
Yeah, well, it's the world's largest media
Snapchat.
company.
facial recognition.
Snapchat is actually interesting because it is the antithesis to Facebook in a way.
Is it?
Yeah, some tech guy who actually came up with the platform to do it said this is a fuck you to Facebook. Facebook records everything. You can delete it later. But what Snapchat
That's
does
right.
is it
No
lets
bleeping there.
it has a server that will automatically
Hey, Mark.
erase
Thanks
your
for
data.
watching.
And that's the beauty. So if Snapchat erases your data, it's kind of saying Facebook shouldn't keep all your data the same way. But it still has all the same problems.
It
Prism
sends
can
a
use Snapchat too.
message, yeah. But hey, we're all in the public eye now. All I'm saying is, if you're not doing any criminal activity, you really have nothing to hide. Other than that, bringing even Siri or what do you call this, like Google Home?
Right.
What's the?
So it's the same type of. It's
I
a
mean,
different
Alexa.
proprietary
Alexa,
technology.
right?
Yes,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The other day I went to look at new cell phones, trying to upgrade my cell phone because, of course, every 2 years they just go
Right.
they just black out. I don't know what they put in their technology to just like boom. I walk in there and there's these smartwatches, right? And so the smartwatch now has a GPS tracker and all sorts of tracking devices in the camera. And I was kind of intrigued because a lot of people are wearing these fun-looking, futuristic watches that are completely black. You can't tell anything, and then you talk to them, you breathe on them, like
Yeah.
you just like I don't know, do whatever with them. And I'm thinking, do I really want Wi-Fi radiation to really constantly go through my body? Do I constantly want to be connected to Wi-Fi and be on the grid? I mean, that to me is an interesting topic of discussion.
so we'll bring it when we have like real technology and all that, because the topic we talked about before was more about social media than just
Right, technology,
itself.
like I wrote to you earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I think it would be such an interesting subject because I personally have a duality about it. I embrace technology, love technological gadgets for like camera equipment and everything that can enhance your life and
Sure.
enhance your anything that is a utility for you. But at the same time, that can always be a double-edged sword, as we obviously see. Interesting.
How do we conclude this? How do we leave off on a positive note and thank the audience for participation, for their participation? Because again, I cannot see what they're writing. I only see Shlomo writing on a regular basis.
Well,
I'm
I
usually-
can maybe start with a bit of a send-off saying that despite the heated discussion today, and thank you for being completely absorbing our energy, you're being
People
here.
see.
Always like
Despite everything, the emotions, we still have love for each other, at least for me. I have love for you and respect, and I'm excited to do this. And I think through these open forum discussions, we can, bring the truth to the surface somewhat, because the truth is always in the eye of the beholder in this particular case. But I feel like through these discussions, we learn about one another. We are individuals and we're different, clearly, in the way we think and the way we perceive the world. And at the end, we just need to walk away knowing that there's something special that connected us to do this project together, and that is more special than.
See, now I had a joke, you see, but now I couldn't say it because I felt
Okay.
doesn't matter.
What? Tell me.
No, you're gonna bring me back to the original part that the audience is watching.
Okay.
Pretty girl next to me, what brought us together. Anyways.
Oh, I totally
I
wasn't
see.
even.
Okay.
Yes, I was.
Did I put a foot in my mouth right now?
No,
What
no,
I
no,
said?
no.
Okay. So I want to say that we are adults and we can walk away from this still being friends and having respect for one another.
Yep. So if you don't see her next week, send the messages to us.
Yeah, because somebody didn't see me. One of my friends like, so what did Rom do? Like, you're not on the show right now. I'm like, oh no, I'm on my way.
Yeah,
Had a prior commitment.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, next week.
What
So
did he do?
so next
Like, little did he know.
next week we're going to have the lovely Haley Patry who's going to be joining us. She's a happiness coach. She's going to be very, very interesting.
I'm so excited.
She
for
made a
Haley.
special trip for us because she wasn't able to come for next Friday, but she messaged me late last night and said I would love to be on the show. She is.
I have another happiness coach. Should we make them meet?
Maybe not on the show. Yeah, maybe at one point.
It would be interesting to get two perspectives.
I don't think that there's too much room here on the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be amazing. She was a part of my movie, or our movie that we were a part of, and she was just a wonderful person. I think a lot of people will learn a lot from her. She has a personal story to share with us, and I think again she'll be a lovely guest, and people will definitely pick up. I'd like to get more maybe comical guests, just so it brings up a different type of mood.
Yeah.
Me and Zohar usually are very funny together, but since we talked about social media technology, he just sounded overly smart and made me feel like a complete moron. Next to you, I literally, again, I know it's myself. Yeah, I sat here like thinking like, oh my God, can I be a little bit more like him?
I can understand why you wanted to make that comment then.
What comment? Which one? Oh, the boobs? Yeah.
The boobs. You're like, this is way above my head. I should talk about something that I really understand.
I could definitely talk about boobs. That's for sure. That's for, if you guys want to have a conversation about women's parts, I'm your man.
How about your personal parts?
You want to talk about my personal parts?
I don't, but you become
I don't have a problem talking about my personal parts. So until next week, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you, Mira, for being here today. Thank you, Zohar, very much for filling in and
thanks for having
being
me, guys.
Such a great co-host for today. Guys, till next week, if you have any questions, please message us. The information is the prickly pear show at gmail.com. Again, the prickly pear, as in two people, show at gmail.com. Get in touch with us. Get in touch with us by next week. We're going to be getting our cups, by the way. I got the mugs.
You got them.
I got the mugs, yes. I got the mugs with the prickly pear logo.
Finally.
Maybe that is something we can give guests as a present.
Oh, yeah.
However, it is about $12 plus shipping, so somehow we have to get a budget to get this.
Yeah, maybe if you order a case.
Yeah.
No, it is ridiculously expensive.
There's no wholesale.
This is gonna manifest.
We're
gonna make it happen. We're gonna figure something out to give to our lovely guests for their time.
And one more thing, sorry, the last thing we want to be able to do is, before every show, we'd like to talk about sponsors. Every podcast has this out there, where if you have something for us to promote, whether it's a product or a service, we would like to do so. We'd like to talk about it. Clearly, we have an audience of people that are tuning in. This is only our second show. We're still learning. We're having a lot of mistakes, but at the same time, we'll grow from this. And I'm hoping that by the 5th show, it's going to be a very engaging and enlightening, Facebook Live. So get in touch with us.
Maybe we should do YouTube Live too.
We can do anything by all means. Let's just figure out this whole technology BS, because I can't even see what the messages are all about.
It's okay. It's a pretty good setup
considering. So thank you very much again. Here's my smile for today. I do love her. Don't think I don't for a second. I love this banter back and forth. I just don't like labels. I cannot stand labels.
You don't like sexism.
I don't like labels. I think I am many things. I'm not just one thing. I could be tactful about one thing and not tactful about another, selfish about one thing, not selfish about another. But that doesn't mean that this is who I am, and this is my problem. We will talk. We will discuss this once we're done the show. So again, if you don't see her next week, you'll understand why. Thank you again for tuning in. Have yourself a wonderful day. Shabbat shalom. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Until next time, stay prickly.
Ciao.